What's good? I go by Osiris. We're going to do a little live tonight. I want to go through the Elon Trump interview. I haven't even seen where the full one is. This stuff is so annoying. I don't know. They put it just on Fox News or the app or something. I don't know which one is the full interview. This is just so crazy. I'm going to jump to Nick, actually. I just saw this from Kaiser Rev. I was actually just talking about this topic today. It's so crazy how, young Nick will bring up something that I was literally I talk about this a lot, but kind of the relationship between whites and blacks. Here's Nicholas J. Fuentes.
Clip, and this is just a great genre of content. You ever go on YouTube and you see black people reacting to rock songs that they've heard for the first time? This is like a distinct genre. There's a lot of YouTubers that only make.
I remember the first time I listened to certain, like Nirvana. I never forget the first time I listened to Nirvana's record. Now, I don't know if he's talking about rock like that, but I remember that because I didn't listen to a lot of rock growing up. I was classically trained, so I listened to a lot of classical music and hip hop. Believe it or not, those are my top two. Then jazz and other stuff. I love John Coltrane, but I got up on Nirvana. And then I just loved the whole grunge era, just even the pop stuff from like Offspring to, all that whole genre in the 90s.
Make this content. And I question how authentic it really is. I think they're really just kind of farming this out for clicks.
It is.
And advertising money. I think
everything on the internet right now is farming. And this came up with what's her name? Patriarch. I never followed her, so I didn't know. Patriarchy Hannah. And I guess she had this persona that she was a trad wife and kids and stuff, and she was just an overweight, whatever. And then my reply was, does it really matter? Like, what's different? This woman was online, I guess people followed her on Twitter, and she was like the perfect trad wife. And she never really showed her face. It's funny how it came up. It's funny how people found out she was doing some sourdough and they saw the reflection in the jar where I guess she was making it prove. I don't know. I'm not a baker. And they said, and people looked at it on X and they're like, that looks like an overweight woman. That doesn't look like the pictures we've seen. It looks like some overweight woman. And then they went down the rabbit trail. X is crazy, man. I remember what Chris Christie lied about when he fled during the, I think it was the blackout or whatever. And the internet kind of knew, okay, he's at the airport. I was like, damn, you can't do anything, man. X will report on you. But my point is, yeah, it's an op. My wife will show me these TikToks and stuff. And we'd be like, oh, yeah, that's fake, but we don't care. It's still funny. It's still cool.
They're putting us on. But this is a genre of content where black people will listen to rock music. And maybe it's real, maybe it's not, but they say they've never heard it before and they listen to a famous rock song and they get really into it and they really like it. And white people love this. White people just love it.
I love it too.
And
it's not just white
somebody
people.
sent me a clip. There was a compilation of black people listening to The Fray for the first time. You know The Fray? It's like a 2000s rock band. And I love that band. Great band. A lot of great songs. They sing How to Save a Life, Never Say Never, Cable Car. A lot of good songs.
I don't know too much about them. I know the songs he's talking about. But.
And anyway, so he sent me this compilation of black people reacting to that song. And I thought it was so good. I love it. And I posted the clip of one guy who was really jamming out to it.
Yeah. That was cool.
I was thinking...
So, it was like a timeline for, cleanse.
You could be cynical about it and you can say, and I think it's true, that black people are definitely just farming that out.
Yeah.
And pick your favorite song. Any white person, pick your favorite rock song, and you can find a video on YouTube of a black person pretending to have never heard it and listening to it for the first time and really enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And these videos have millions of views. People love this.
The homie...
And you could say... that
the homie Black Pegasus kind of made a genre. He's very well knowledgeable in music, but he kind of made a genre off of the thumbnails with it, and then like it was like rapper. The homie Black Pegasus will do that. I'll come back to this 159. So Black Pegasus, a lot of his stuff, it's great, it's smart, and then he gets people in there, and he's blown up, 450 subs. See, here it is, rapper first time reaction to Elton John. He knows Elton John. He's just, it's like, okay, this is the click. Okay, you click it, and then you find out, oh, this bra right here, this bra Black Pegasus, he's a cool bra. That's what Nick is kind of the vibe Nick is talking about, is whether it's real or not. It's kind of like, I truly, it's corny as hell to say, but I'm a huge music fan, and music is truly the universal language. It truly is a universal language. And the way that it was brought up, we are 7 minutes in, and the first reference of the dreidel country has been, Ben Shapiro's people have been referenced for the first time. It's a long time for me, but we were talking about it in reference to, and I'll get to that story too, where they're picking that weird witch-looking that bald black woman to be the Jesus and Jesus Christ superstar, and it's that play, or that musical is always designed to be, from the jump, it's corny. From the jump, it's designed to be like different. So it's not as weird as people might say, but it is still disrespectful. But my point was, and then we looked through. When I first saw the news of that, I looked through it, and I saw the news, and I was like, I know that there's a tiny hat behind it. And I said I didn't even know. I said, I'm putting my reputation, money on. I put all my money on the line. There's a tiny hat behind funding it, and we saw tiny hats from the casting to the executive level, and maybe I'll cover that deeper. But my point of that was, part of the reason why I am so big against, or not against, but speaking out on the tiny hats, is I think they largely have been subversives. I've talked about this with the Civil Rights Act. They were the energy behind it to get their businesses in black areas. And what they've done is they've pit the white against the black. And then they've been subversive and kind of hide within, oh, I'm a white. No, you're not. You have an ethno-state that's a Jewish ethno-state. That's not a white ethno-state. So let's try again. And they pit these people together, and I think that's what, I haven't seen this clip from Nick yet, but I think that's where he's going with this.
Love this. And you could say that, have they really never heard those songs before? Are they really enjoying it that much? Or is this just, so we could be cynical. But I was watching the video. I got a big kick out of it. I really enjoyed it. And I was thinking to myself, why is it that white people do like that?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, why is it that when we see a black person with like a do-rag on, because that was another one, it was two black guys and they have a do-rag on and they're really getting into it. And you ask yourself, why is it that we as white people like to watch black people enjoy our culture? And I was thinking, contrary to a lot of the racialists or race idolaters on the right, and this is going to be, maybe a lot of people aren't going to agree with this to watch the show, but I'm going to say it because this is what I feel, and it's true. You know me, I'm a Catholic, and I am a white nationalist. I think America should be a white country, but I don't hate the other races. I don't think they're less than human. And I wouldn't even strictly say that I'm a white supremacist. I'm proud of being white. I think the white people.
I can tell you, Nick and Call, I'm not going to speak for Nick, but he's not. I can guarantee, I can tell you from, I watch the show damn near every day. He's not that. That's for sure. He is a white nationalist. He is a Christian futurist. Yeah, that for sure. A Christian authoritarian. Yeah, that's for sure. That other stuff, nah, that's not the accurate term.
People are certainly exceptional at a lot of things.
And if somebody is that, I don't even care. I just want the labels to be accurate.
Maybe most things, but I think that there's an inherent equality that we all have. Anyway, and this is distinct from other people on the right, and I see this more and more, people that are genuine race idolaters. They worship their race. And this even compromises their spirituality. They think that they won't even adhere to Christianity because they think Christianity is racially egalitarian. Anyway, we talked a little bit about this last night. And when I see things like that video, now maybe it's sentimentality, maybe it's, playing on your emotions because it's nostalgic. And so maybe there's something subjective there. But I think about the reason that white people like to see black people enjoy the music. And I think there is something fundamental. There is something within all of us that we do actually long for a universal community of human beings. And obviously, I think that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have borders. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have distinct racial communities within the world. But I think that when you see videos like that, and there is something about that that makes you feel good. There is something about that where you actually...
You got to hold up, Nick. You got to hold up. You're not living up to the monster. Like, they think you're a monster, Nick. You can't talk like this, man. You're not living up to that mantra. If somebody who just listens to everything that's said about this guy and they just jump into this video and hear this, it might be a cold bucket of water to the face that somebody lied to you.
You like that they appreciate our culture, and vice versa. Black people like when white people appreciate their culture. I think it does betray the fact that on a deep level, we do actually long for a universal community. We do actually have this universal human experience, and we actually do like to share. There is this innate human desire to share with other people, our culture, things about ourselves, just like we have a desire to share within a racial community, but also between racial communities. And I was thinking that at the same time that I saw that, I was also thinking about the Trevor Noah video.
Yes, I was thinking
I don't know if you guys
thing.
saw this, but it was actually really surprising. Trevor Noah is the South African black host of The Daily Show. He took over for Jon Stewart some years ago. I don't really particularly like him. I think he's anti-white. I don't think he's very funny. I don't think he's as smart as he thinks he is. I think he's got a real attitude. But he was on this talk show with these two black women, and they were more insufferable than him. But he said on the show that as Jim Crow and segregation and racism was on its way out, he said America automatically embraced racial integration.
I'm going to play that clip next. I got to find the podcast because I want to see some of the context there, but I'll play that after we're done here.
And he said that was really a false dichotomy that was presented, that you either had segregation and cruelty and abuse and animosity towards the black people, but then the only other course besides that was racial integration, which is that blacks and whites would be forced to live together, forced to integrate, and that's just how it has to be. He said, and is there something to be said for the fact that black people can relate to other black people more than they relate to white people? Or even more specifically, that Africans from Africa can relate to other Africans and communicate with each other in their own way and understand each other in a deeper level. The word he's looking for is familiarity. They're familiar. Their habits.
And I know I'm not going to do clips on the After Show Carnage with Nick in them, like segments, but I'm going to leave the lives up there. And I'm going to do a push where I think this is the year where YouTube has to bring Nick back. I don't see why they wouldn't. The culture in the country has shifted, and Nick has a presence, and this is not monster material. Yeah, you're gonna get these jokes. That's what life is about. You're gonna get these jokes. But when it comes to serious content, I think YouTube wants this on there. You've got other competitors like Kick. I don't think Nick messes with Kick anymore because they were messing around with the censorship. But you have the competitors. We just heard a story where Twitch is allegedly Kick, the guy who co-founded Kick, what used to be a Twitch streamer, and he said there's a lot of these bots out here. So when you see big name X on Twitch, many of them are using a program to make it look like 10,000 people are watching when it's not. And when you get 10,000 people watching, well, then the computer program says, well, maybe we can get 10,000 more. And then real people come in. So they're using bots to artificially, the game is, from what I'm looking at, the game is dirty. Just looking at it more closely than ever. That's what the Ashley St. Clair thing represents. The dirty game of alt media. It's dirty, incestuous. And I think if you want real authentic movement and eyes, this might be the time. I really do. You might think I'm crazy. I think YouTube is going to didn't they let Sneak go on for a hot second and then ban him again or something? I'm losing track of all this censorship. But I think this is I don't know if they're going to do it with Tate or not, but I think it could be. I don't even really, not to hate on Tate, I'm not the biggest fan. I'm not as big of a fan of Tate as others, but I think Sneeko and Nick, it could be the time when they get back on this year. I really do.
The way they talk, sense of humor, all sorts of things, even little things that we don't often think of when we think about racial or cultural differences. He said, and is there something to be said for the fact that maybe we should go our separate ways? Maybe we feel more comfortable and more familiar with people that are like us. And maybe there's something to be said for a separation without that animosity. And I feel like that, like synthesizing those two truths, that is how to develop a kind of post-woke.
I agree completely. And the biggest part of that is, that's why I want to hear the context, is the biggest part that I was surprised about from Trevor Noah, which I actually think he is very bright. It's just the fascism of the government working with the media, that he's a ladder climber. If you want to climb the ladder, you know what you have to be. So he does the afro and all that, fake blackness. He's almost as light skinned as Nick is. So what is this black for him? I don't know. But I think the thing that got me is what Nick was talking about. There wasn't any animosity. And that felt, I'm going to play the clip after this. That felt weird. I was like, it wasn't the fact that he said maybe blacks should, my interpretation was not forced to be separate, but allowed to be separate just culturally, and it's not a big deal anymore. And he had no animosity with it. That's complete. Everything about 2020, Black Lives Matter, Kendrick Lamar just performed at the halftime show. I think the feedback on that is a lot more negative than we think with all the stuff I'm reading about it. And Kendrick Lamar is that overt, try too hard to be black so hard you're just annoying. And what Trevor Noah came with on this clip that Nick's talking about, it seemed like some real talk. It seemed like real talk. It didn't seem like the normal power play that they do.
Like a post political correctness, post integration racial politics, because I think everybody is recognizing integration is failing. We are different. We are distinct. There is a tension between the races. At the same time, it doesn't mean that we have to kill each other. We are different.
I do have a small disagreement. I don't think integration is failing. I think the forced integration is failing, and that's the government. The government came in. There were other civil acts and stuff, but I always go back to 64, and that's the major one. That is forced integration. So if I have a company or whatever, I can't decide based on whatever I want to decide on to hire somebody or not, or I could get sued. And people just keep that secret, obviously, but that's forced. If the integration is natural, then I'm all for it.
Never going to bridge that gap between the races.
It's not a disagreement with Nick. I don't think it's just, I think it's taking it to a step further. I have more libertarian in me than than Nick, and he's a former libertarian.
Always be a gulf. There'll always be an uncomfortable tension. There'll always be discomfort. There'll always be a lack of familiarity. There'll always be a sense of alienation between the races. And so that is what Trevor Noah is saying. At the same time, it doesn't mean we have to eradicate each other. At the same time, it doesn't mean we have to subjugate each other. And I think that is towards a racial politics where there are distinct racial communities in the world and in the country, and that the relationship between the communities is just simply managed. And there can be times when there is more harmony between the races and less harmony. And, certainly there'll be conflict and there'll be times of relative peace. But I think that's where things need to go. This idea that, there is sameness, we're human, and our humanness and our innate urge for universal community, it makes us want to share with each other, and in some cases come together. At the same time, that same human nature also turns inwardly. And at the same time that we want a universal community, we feel more comfortable within our own racial community most of the time. And so maybe we can come together in certain common spaces, certain public spaces.
And you can see how I take it to the hats way more than Nick does. Way more. Nick doesn't hardly even talk about it, which is I'm fine with. I don't want him to change what he's doing. I'm newer to this, and the reason why I talk about the hat so often is because I think this is the reason why. I think they are in the way, and I'm using this generally, obviously not all blacks or whites or whatever, but generally speaking, especially the Zionist ones, they are in the way of us taking us to where Nick is talking right now. They are the ones that portray Nick. They are the biggest ones that this right here. Oh, you never see this spread anywhere. But if Nick makes a joke about whatever, I don't even know what the jokes are. Somebody crawling out of a tunnel or something. I'm a grown ass man, and we're gonna have to have grown ass discussions. And if I see these things, and you try to call me names or do this other stuff, then we have problems. You're getting in the way of this. And I don't care who you are. If you're getting in the way of what Nick's talking about here, you and I have a problem.
Like in a government building or in a church or a public square, but maybe we retreat to our separate corners in our neighborhoods and playgrounds and schools and things like that. And sort of like, how do you synthesize those two positions? Because, I would say that, and it's not to say that, it's just I'm in the middle, but no, I'm not someone who is so racist that says I could never be a Christian because black people are inferior. Because there are people that believe that. I know people that think that, and I disagree with them strongly on that. And
I love how he said, I'm not so racist. I'm just a little bit.
People say, we just hate people that aren't like us and this and that. So I'm not necessarily that far, but I'm also not on the other side where I say race means nothing.
Oh, yeah.
And America should become all brown people. And I want brown people in my neighborhood because it's like, I want to live in a white neighborhood. When I get married and have
here's the poorly kept secret. So do black people.
Family, or if I decide to do that, I want to raise my kids in a white neighborhood.
Whoa, Nick, don't do that. Nick, I listen to every word you say, bro. Don't do that. What did you say? He said if. Don't. It might not be a big deal, but that is what he said, talking about family. Let me bring this back real quick. This is off topic, but
when I get married and have a family, or if I decide to do that.
No, bro. I can't. How am I going to tell another bro he has to get married or stuff like that? But I'm hoping that that there's really no if there. That's my hope.
I want to raise my kids in a white neighborhood, and I want the people to be white. I want them to be like me.
And there's
And
nothing
even
wrong.
more particularly, I don't even want to live in the South. I want to live in the Midwest.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Or among American ethnics, because people that are Italian and Irish that live in Boston or Chicago or New York are different than people that are German and English that live in Naperville, who live in.
But we're already kind of, it's not, I don't even think it's that, Nick. We're already divided like that. I mean, there's already neighborhoods. You know where the Mexicans live. You know where the blacks live. You know where the whites live, largely in every city in this country. So it's already kind of like that. I think we just got to get rid of the civil rights. The civil rights have to go. That's where Donald Trump's coming from, where he says, well, I'll use the weight of the DOJ against anybody who criticizes Ben Shapiro's people, Barry Weiss's people. If anybody who criticizes them, we want to, especially college, whatever, we want to hem you up in some type of way. And then they go over to Germany talking about free speech. But the Civil Rights Act is what allows all that. And for those who are still talking about the Transformers and all that, which I still talk about, but rarely, that's how they're doing it too with the civil rights. Then they're even including the fats now. New York literally is including the fats. If you eat too much McDonald's, you too could be a protected class. If you're just a normal white, you don't eat too much McDonald's, you don't run around with the rainbow flag, we ain't got much for you. That's pretty much what the civil rights boils down to.
Like Springfield, Illinois. They're different. So anyway, so those are just some thoughts I've had about race, but I think that's sort of the future. It reminds me of what I think Sam Francis, it was either Sam Francis or Pat Buchanan, but they said about race, they said it's not everything, but it isn't nothing. And that's sort of where I'm at. Because I saw that video, I saw some people kind of being really negative in the replies. They said, oh, you're posting an N-word, this is crap. And it's like, can't we?
I think he's talking about the video with the black guy singing The Fray. And I saw where Nick was going with. He didn't post any comment with it that I saw. So when he does that, what he's doing is, I'm presenting something to you, and your reaction gives him information. That's what it is. I didn't frame it in any way. If you think I'm making fun of it or I shouldn't do it, whatever, it's all coming from you because I didn't post anything with it. I've done that a couple times too. I'll actually post it with a little period to show I did that on purpose.
Isn't there some sense of camaraderie between the races? Isn't it amusing? I don't actually hate the other groups. I don't want to go and get married to them and live with them all the time and have to deal with all their problems and be an alien in my own land at the same time. I don't
hate them. I just don't want to go to the grocery store and see them. I don't want to drive my car and turn over and see them. I'm just joking. I don't want to go to the DMV and see them. I don't want to go to the restaurant and see them.
So that's just what I was thinking about that video, because I saw it and I was like, I like that they like the song. That's my favorite song. I like that they like it. And there's something common, which is why we both enjoy it and we like sharing it. But then we want to go home,
That's a shout out. That's a big shout out to Kaiser Rev. One of the best Clippers out there. Man, the Clippers got the homie Classic Grapes. I don't even see Classic Grapes tweets anymore. I know the main account got banned, but he has another backup account. I don't even see it. I got to make a playlist or something. Here's the video that Nick was talking about where he posted to the black dude, jamming out. And I knew where he was going because I love music and there's nothing wrong here, So he's just jamming out to it. And that's what that video was. Let's go to the Trevor Noah one. I don't know what they do with the copyright, or I would jam out to that too. If I knew for sure they wouldn't pull the video, then I would play the whole thing. I don't care about the monetization part. With my tens of viewers, thank you for stopping by. This is really now become After Show Carnage. I go by Osiris. It is on the Middle MAGA Network. This is Trevor Noah. This is the clip that Nick was talking about, that we were talking about, where it's kind of surprising. he said desegregation was a mistake because the races aren't compatible, and he wasn't vitriolic about it. So what's going on?
I found myself wondering, and this applies to America, and then maybe it'll go to other places in a different way because Finland ties in. Do you think that integration was the right move? Like, and now I'm separating two things because I know in America people are like, well, of course, I mean, there was racism and there's segregation, and I go, yeah, no, I'm separating them. Let's separate someone being oppressed and someone not being able to get a job and someone not being able to get a bank loan. Let's take all of those, the negative things away, because I'll put myself out personally and say, I think whether we're talking about gifted kids who are anomalous, let's say, to the norm, whether we are talking about and I mean anything that does not fit into a category, I think the part of the reason Finland is able to do it is because, have you been to Finland?
It's very homogeneous.
I've been to Finland. You know who's in Finland? Finnish people. That's it. That's it. And because they're all Finnish, there's an idea of like, no, we all head in the same direction. We all know what our actions mean. And that's a really powerful thing I've learned in communicating with other people. When I'm in a room with anyone where we start to tie together multiple things. So if I'm in a room with Black people, already there's like an implicit trust because we know what certain actions, words, and vibes mean. And then you're in a room with another African. Already. Now, even if you shout at me, I know what your shout means. The same way an Italian knows what an Italian shout means.
Yeah.
Right? I know I'm prefacing it with a lot because it's a loaded question.
Yes.
But I would love to know if you think integration was the right solution, maybe, on the other side of, what America, of civil rights.
Yeah. No, I don't. And I don't think it's actually that controversial when if you understand that segregation and integration weren't the only options. Like within those two options, it may seem like integration is the more progressive. Like, of course, we don't want segregation. But again, when you're being integrated into institutions, into a culture that's a supremacist culture, that's a culture that feeds off of hierarchy, that feeds off of insecurity, anxiety, why are we being integrated into that?
Okay, so now I need the context. So she got a little negative at the end. Trevor Noah had no negativity in his presentation of it. I want to go back again now and react to it. I'm looking for this full podcast. I want to hear how they got to that. That sounds like a great, actually, discussion.
I found myself wondering, and this applies to America, and then maybe it'll go to other places in a different way because Finland.
I don't care about America. I mean, America. I do care about America. I don't care about the other places. So I know I forgot what his ethnicity is, but that's one of the big things, the difference between a nationalist and then all these other people. You're either a nationalist or you're a globalist. And he has to say, well, it could go to other places. I don't care because he has an African there or whatever.
I found myself wondering, and this applies to America, and then maybe it'll go to other places in a different way because Finland ties in. Do you think that integration was the right move?
What does that mean?
Like,
what does he mean? I don't understand. What does he mean that, do you think that integration was the right move? I need to understand, are you talking about the Civil Rights Act? Are you talking, because the problem there was the government getting involved and forcing it. So I don't know what that means.
And now I'm separating two things because I know in America people are like, well, of course, I mean, there was racism and there's segregation, and I go, yeah, no, I'm separating them. Let's separate someone being oppressed and someone not being able to get a job and someone not being able to get a bank loan. Let's take all of those, the negative things away, because
okay, let me bring that back. Someone not being able to get a job. What does that mean?
Oppressed and someone not.
See, it's still not good enough.
And I go, yeah, no, I'm separating them. Let's separate someone being oppressed and someone not.
Somebody being oppressed. I mean, I struggle with that. It's because I think he's talking about Jim Crow. I don't know what he's talking about. There's a lot to this topic. The forced integration, when that happened, that was slavery. That's what happened. My ancestors, slaves through not America, but through Jamaica, through Britain, they're brought here. So that's when the integration happened. That's so I don't. So you're saying integration was wrong? Well, the country was built on integration, and I know it was definitely in the different pieces. But you understand why I'm confused here. The integration's already been there, even though you might say this is the black area, or even during slavery, you have most of the blacks. It wasn't 100%. Some blacks owned slaves, some were in the North and weren't slaves. To me, that's still integration. I mean, you're on the country. Otherwise, you wouldn't even have been there. He's talking about Finland. Well, I don't know the history of Finland, but obviously there's no slaves that were dragged up over there. So that they never had integration like that.
Not being able to get a job and someone not being able to get a bank loan. Let's take all of those, the negative things away.
Not being able to get a job and not being able to get a bank loan. Is that really an accurate description? What does that mean? The problem should be if you can't get a job or a bank loan, then, because my argument is you should be able to discriminate. If somebody says, I don't want to loan you money because I don't like the hat you're wearing, the color of your skin, or whatever the case is, they should be able to do that. The problem is when you amass the power concentrated into like 5 different things, and then they also work with the federal government, no, you shouldn't have the power. So if somebody takes money, Tesla gets government contracts. Absolutely, they should not be able to discriminate, even though you just heard me say I am for preferences. A company should be able to choose. Not if you take a dime of federal money, you can't. So that's the problem. And I know so few people have worked through it to that level, but that's where I'm struggling with their conversation so far. I did find the full podcast too.
Because I'll put myself out personally and say, I think whether we're talking about gifted kids who are anomalous, let's say, to the norm, whether we are talking about, and I mean anything that does not fit into a category, I think the part of the reason Finland is able to do it is because, have you been to Finland?
It's very homogeneous.
I've been to Finland.
Yeah, so
you know who's
you're
in
looking at North Korea, China, Japan. Yeah, it's a lot of countries.
Finland? Finnish people. That's it. That's it. And because they're all Finnish, there's an idea of like, no, we all head in the same direction. We all know what our actions mean. And that's a really powerful thing I've learned in communicating with other people. When I'm in a room with anyone where we start to tie together multiple things. So if I'm in a room with black people, already there's like an implicit trust because we know what certain actions, words, and vibes mean.
Yeah, see, I'm not against Trevor. This is a great moment. Don't get me wrong. But no, that's the beauty. America is a unique place. America is a unique country. And the only thing that makes it unique, I think the sole thing that makes us unique is the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And I know that goes in, as soon as you start saying those words, it just goes in one ear and out the other. It's just like blah, 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 blah. I don't know how else to say it. But that's what that's factually what it is. There's nothing else special about this country. That's what's special. And they're just pieces of paper. It's the belief in that. It's that you do have former slaves. You do have Irish who were treated like crap when they came here too. I remember in high school talking about we shooting the breeze or whatever. I had an Italian friend and we were talking about like, man, because there was, in Little Italy in Cleveland, we were talking about like how, man, when black people went through, it's a very small little area, but when black people went through the hill, this is before I was born, but everybody tells the stories. Everybody knows that nobody's arguing this. They used to throw stuff at the black people when they drove their cars through. And then I was like, damn, that's messed up because the Italians were on the bottom of the totem pole too. So I'm like, why didn't we kind of get together? That was my homie Scott back in the day. But let's continue on here. But you see what I'm saying is it's not, he's right there, but that's not what he's going against. What really makes this country special, though, is the belief in those documents, which we're quickly just completely losing.
And then you're in a room with another African. Already. This person. Now, even if you shout at me, I know what your shout means. The same way an Italian knows what an Italian shout means.
Yeah.
Right? I know I'm prefacing it with a lot. Because
Yeah.
No, that was really well done. That was really well done. Let me just take a quicker look at the larger podcast here. Oh, it's Trevor Noah's podcast. Okay, I didn't know. So that gives him a little bit of it's your home court, so you can kind of go out there a little bit. Let's hear a little bit of this. I like this thing on YouTube where it shows you where most people were watching, so you probably can skip around a little bit.
From my primary school.
Yeah.
And now if you drive past it, fits perfectly in the middle of most of these events. Like everything. I mean, like everything. I wrote
Master of none, though. Master of none.
Don't say that.
No. Actually, no. Actually, you should say that.
You think she's a master of none?
You should say that. Well, I'm gonna read you the full quote.
Yeah.
So I like to consider myself a master of none, and I used to hate it my whole life.
Okay.
Until I'll read you the full quote. The full saying is, "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one."
Yes.
Okay.
I love it. I love it.
I didn't know that. Trevor is very smart. I've always considered myself a jack of all trades, master of none, and not in a really a positive way, not necessarily negative, but I've dabbled in a lot of things and not really an expert in any of it. Even tennis and violin, I was, good, but not great.
That word amateur, there's a beautiful essay by Edward Said where he talks about, the difference between professionals and amateurs. And he
Yes.
says, at the heart of amateur is amour. It's love.
It is the love of something.
Yeah.
It's actually a source of pride because you're infusing love. You're led by love, not necessarily a need for status and accolades and professional sort of titles. And so I embrace that.
But let me say, this lady has a MacArthur, like the genius. Before we go down this Amour road, this is a very credentialed
I have no idea who these people are.
professor here.
Christiana, you could not be more Nigerian
I'm
if you
just like,
tried.
Exactly.
No, because if my parents are listening, they're like, oh, she's just speaking to some person with opinion. I'm like, no, mom and
So
dad.
yeah, that's for your parents.
That's for my
then.
parents.
That's
This
for your
woman has a
parents.
MacArthur genius grant. So
Yeah.
she's written a ton of books. For those at home that may not be familiar, Ruha is a tenured professor at Princeton University. That's why I'm like, she's not an amateur, guys. Who's currently
So Nigerian.
who's
Let me tell you something. There's nothing a Nigerian will point out more.
There's nothing I respect less than a tenured professor. That does nothing for me at all.
Then this person, this is a professor.
Yes,
Can I
Doctor,
introduce you?
professor.
This is a doctor.
I'm sorry, Dr.
This
Ruha.
is. Do you know what is PhD? Do you know? No, you're not talking to a person. This is a doctor.
She's not your mate.
You are so. It's so crazy how you just like. And another thing,
Wait,
doctor.
but it's important context.
Trevor,
But what you're seeing here is, and I went to school with a lot of the Black Africans. The Black Africans, they don't look kindly on Black Americans. Let's just tell you, any black person not from America doesn't naturally look highly upon Black Americans. And that's why there's that tension with the Black Americans and any other Black from any other, your parents are from a different country, because they come here and they're like schooling. They're aggressive, almost like the Asians, and not the same as far as the intellect part, but as far as the aggressiveness to focus on education and stuff like that. And they come here and they see the Blacks, the fat Black that didn't get the lift. And you just see those kind of things. And it's not all Blacks, but it kind of feels like the Blacks don't really care to speak against it. They would never condone like a Nigerian, like a 500-pound Nigerian. If you don't know, this fat Black. I don't know why she's getting play, I guess because she's fat, who does these whack hip hop songs. And she called the Lyft, and the Lyft driver's like, my suspension, I'm just paraphrasing, my suspension can't hang, I'm out. And she's suing, and now she's doing the rounds on the Breakfast Club and wherever else. I'm just using that as an example. These types right here, oh, they never have that. They're laughing at you. American Blacks, these right here, all three of them are laughing at you. They don't, I think, if I'm correct, I think they're all, or maybe it's just that one. Let me look real quick and see if she's Nigerian too. I'll look it up and see. But I know for sure, Trevor Noah, if he was going to be honest, and the Nigerian sitting across from him, I don't know if she is either. She looks like she's a kind of the academia type. They don't like that. They might not have the courage to speak out against it. You get them behind a closed door, they'll talk. They'll let it all out about the Blacks, and they're talking about American Blacks, the FBA's, the foundational Blacks.
Start counting how many times she has to remind.
Someone has to do it because she's too humble.
Yeah, and I think that's why you're the perfect person to speak to about I wrote down a list of things because I didn't want to miss anything. Everything from DEI to the world of tech, education, community and the way we see it, society, government, the role that it plays. I was like, it feels like your work has drawn you into everything. Your degrees, your qualifications, your expertise, the amount of time you spend on it, your books. So maybe the first thing we should jump into is DEI. Has DEI failed? Was it bound to fail?
Yeah, I was never a big booster of DEI. So to see it coming down, I feel for those who were genuinely invested in that as a potential to transform.
Damn. I don't know what her take was, but it just feels like they are abandoning ship. Abandon ship. This is not a drill. The DEI grift is over.
Institutions and industries, but it always felt like a concession, a placeholder for something that could be more transformative. And so, like with placeholders, I think they become permanent as opposed to being a stepping stone. It becomes this kind of, safe way of corralling those who would sort of
A
cause.
stepping stone. So what? It wasn't strong enough? She's using the word transformative. So she's not against DEI. She's jumping on, I don't know her positions, but that's what it sounds like. She's using the DEI type of language. She didn't say DEI was bad. So what it looks like is you see the ship is taking in water and you're just getting a lifeboat.
Trouble.
Right.
And so, you could say it was bound to fail, or you could say it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. And so I think we shouldn't be satisfied with kind of these.
And Nina Turner's been doing, this is a leftist who had a fail run in Congress in Ohio, actually, in my district where I grew up, actually. And she's been tweeting these really terrible tweets. They go viral because they're short and they, kind of divisive, but they're really whack. And she said something to the effect of, why are you guys saying DEI? Why don't you just say black? I don't know. I can't speak for anybody else, but Nina, I trust you. I will say black if I need to say black. Don't worry about that.
Sort of token fleeting forms of attention, because as we're seeing now, they come and go very quickly. So many of the people who were hired under DEI programs, after the killing of George Floyd, are now losing their jobs.
Yeah.
Entire programs are going up in smoke. So I think we should.
That's what they worried about. We still haven't talked about what is DEI good or bad? The jobs that were, so she got, I don't know what her degrees, they just talked about it. I don't remember it. But from what I got from it, I was like, it's not math. Like, what's your expertise in DEI? What's your expertise? Critical race theory?
Rethink what our demands are.
Ruha, it's interesting you say that. The thing that made me come across you, not first, but a very viral moment, you gave a commencement speech at your alma mater, Spelman College, and you said black faces in high places will not save us. And for some people who really believe in representation politics, they jump up against that idea. They think, no, we need black faces in high spaces. What brought you to that conclusion? Because it's a very radical one, and also I would say kind of cynical as well. And I'm a cynical person. But I'm just interested about what about your life path brought you to that place. It doesn't matter.
Wow, that goes against the talented 10th. Let's hear what she has to say.
If it's a black person at the top.
Yes.
This system is rotten.
So many stories I could tell. One is, as a graduate student, I was in that kind of position of being enrolled to be the black face of a scientific program that was trying to recruit more black patients to undergo a very experimental treatment. So I was enrolled to be that person that was supposed to help win over the trust of this community that was needed for this program. And it was a very uncomfortable position because I was, on one hand, sort of touted and put up on a pedestal, but at the same time, very vulnerable, because if I had said no, then I would have lost access to X, Y, and Z. So
yeah, that's the ideal of the W.E.B. Du Bois talented 10th. It's just basically what you see in the world today. You see, like, you look at CNN, there's certain blacks they put on CNN. There's certain blacks that they get to put on a pedestal, even in alt media. Alt media is worse than the corporate media. Who are the blacks that get propped up in alt media? And some of them I like. I got my Tatum hat right here. But none of them, Candace Owens is one of the only ones that will speak out on anything. I mean, you look at the rest of them, most of them are gay. You got Rob Smith and this other gay Xavier one. They're really annoying. And I'm just looking at who are the black men propped up, not politicians. Byron Donald is, but look at him. He has to support Ben Shapiro's country. Who are the black in the conservative propped up? I don't think ABL. I like ABL. I don't know his position on the Middle East. He doesn't really take any kind of stance on anything. That, even though I like him, that's not a diss. It's just like Officer Tatum. Doesn't really. Sometimes he will, but not really taking big stances. I'm just trying to think somebody in the chat tell me who are the blacks in the alt media space. And the reason why it's important to look who gets propped up, who doesn't. Candace Owens got propped up only because she played the role. You go back and listen to her clips from years ago. She was like, Israel is our greatest ally. That's Candace Owens years ago. And she woke up, she flipped, and then she's still big now because she already got propped up, but now she's not getting propped. She got demonetized on YouTube. Who's a black in the conservative space? They're all like corny or gay. I mean, literally. I'm trying to. Who is a black male conservative that's in there? I like black conservative perspective. I like him, but he's not. He's not, and I don't. I'm not knocking him. I'm a big fan of his. No, Greg, I no diss at all. But to do the channel, you kind of got to keep it pretty much. I mean, safe. You're on YouTube, so yeah. It's the point is the talented 10th is you take certain blacks, you prop them up. Jamel Hill's a perfect example. Joy Reid, perfect example of the idea of you take a talented, influential, and don't make the mistake of underestimating your enemy. Jamel Hill and Joy Reid are very talented and very good. But what they do is they prop them up, give them the money, and say, this is what you do now, and you're the face of black women or whatever. Stacey Abrams. And the perfect one, Jasmine Crockett now. Perfect example. Well, she's a politician. I want to stay out of that. But it's in media, politics, everywhere. And she's going against that. That's very interesting. That's why that Nigerian there with Trevor called that radical. This is radical. The idea of the talented 10th is just, that's literally what academia is built on. It's built on that with the Greek fraternities, sororities. It's all that's the whole infrastructure of it. For her to go against it is a very kind of radical stance.
One is my own complicity. Then very recently, in the last year, in my own institution, I've observed how Black administrators in particular are really being called on to do the dirty work, to write the threatening emails, to call students who are demanding an end to genocide aggressive and angry and a threat. And so it's not the white president, but a whole flank of Black administrators.
Ooh, this is some fire stuff right here. I did not expect this. What she's saying is, I'm tired of you. And see, notice they don't call out the hats. I'm really pissed off at these type of blacks here who know what they do is they conflate the hats with whites. We can't do that. You cannot do that. But you're talking about Palestine, but they will never they will never name the hat. Never. They'd never do it. But this is still a progress. This is still a white pill. What she's saying is, I'm tired of you all using my skin color to do your dirty work. Okay, let me hear you out.
Who are the ones who are really, doing the work of these institutions to repress free speech and dissent. And I think that is very strategic, because when that is the face of the message, people perhaps who believe in representational politics may be less likely to question it, be critical of it, to push back against it. So it's really a way of insulating business as usual with a cosmetic veneer of change and progress and inclusion that I really believe we have to look past and look through in order to see what's actually going on.
I can imagine, as I'm listening to you say these two things about diversity, the first part of it is, I can imagine a lot of people who don't share your politics cheering with you, first of all. Because I think of people like Elon Musk who've said...
Oh, wow. Trevor is almost like he's reading my mind because I don't share their politics. And after she's done, Trevor is like, there might be a black guy in his basement, Osiris, doing an after show carnage, and he might be like getting hype on this. So where are we at now? This is a mic check. He's like, wait a second, look at her face. Is this where we need to be right now? That's kind of where Trevor's like, okay, let's be careful now. We might agree with people that we're supposed to not. Wow, what a moment. This is incredible.
I think of people like Elon Musk who have said, no, he's like, we don't
be critical of it, to push back against it. So it's really a way of insulating business as usual with a cosmetic veneer of change and progress and inclusion that I really believe we have to look past.
Oh, was Black Lives Matter that?
And look through in order to see what's actually going on.
I can imagine, as I'm listening to you say these two things about diversity, the first part of it is, I can imagine a lot of people who don't share your politics cheering with you, first of all. Because I think of people like Elon Musk who have said, no, he's like, we don't want diversity. Yeah. We want the best people for the job, and that's it. And stop hiring diversity. Boeing planes are crashing.
That's not. Oh, don't do that, Trevor. Don't do that. Elon Musk has never said he doesn't want diversity. He's saying that he doesn't want it to be the deciding factor. The factor is merit. And after merit, we're hoping to get diversity. He's not anti-diversity. Nick's not anti, I'm not anti-diversity. Don't do that. I don't like when people misconstrue the take, especially smart people. That triggers me. That pisses me off.
because of the blacks.
Yes.
The blacks don't know how to screw doors in, right?
Yes.
Even though there's no record of this. So he would hear you and be like, yes, thank you. We don't want diversity. We want the best person for the job.
Yes.
Another person would be like, wait, but then Ruha, if we're not addressing the exclusion of people, like when I think of South Africa's history, the intention behind what we called Black economic empowerment, which was terribly implemented, by the way, I think the idea behind it was great. And it was, for a long time, Black people couldn't go to schools, Black people couldn't get this type of education, they couldn't get this type of job, they couldn't live in the city, they couldn't, similar to America, right? You couldn't get.
No, it's not similar to. Why are we talking about South Africa? I know he's from South Africa, right? Or I don't know, has ties there. That's not. No, it's not the same. He's talking about apartheid. That's not the same.
A bank loan, you couldn't get the mortgage, your house was undervalued, etc. Continues to be. And so someone said, how do we design a system that tries to right that wrong and get people to where they should be? And I can imagine somebody listening to what you're saying going like, whoa, wait, but then what are we supposed to do? Not fix it?
Yeah,
because I know you're very solutions driven as well. What do you think we're missing when we only think of the inclusion or not the inclusion?
Simply put, we're not asking what we're being included into. And so, whether we draw on something that Martin Luther King said in terms of being integrated into a burning house, or we think about the fact that plantations were very diverse places. But we would never say that, and we would never say that they were, we would never say that they were progressive or liberal. So diversity and domination can go hand in hand. And honestly, many of the institutions that people are currently working on continue this plantation ethos. I just came back from a conference where educators of color working in schools around the country, specifically independent schools, private schools, that so many of them got hired a few years ago are now being let go. They were used up. They were put on the face of the websites. They were used to make these institutions feel good. And now that they are actually using their voices, they're being let go. And so that means that it was never about true inclusion of people's insights and experiences, but it was there to make the institutions feel good about them.
Well, but that's what you guys wanted. You wanted, I have the right color. I'm a woman. That's what you wanted, isn't it? But let me not break your flow. Keep on going.
And so again, when we're offered two choices, exclusion or inclusion, we always have to ask ourselves what's being left off the table.
I actually had a follow-up. You have been an activist alongside the students in the pro-Palestine movement, kind of become I'd say the professorial face of this movement at Princeton. And because of your...
Man, it's interesting that a lot of this, it sounds like, is being brought up when we watch. And it was blown up on TikTok. They're trying to stop it now with this whole deal to say, hey, you can't show what we're doing over there in the Middle East because it's causing us problems. This right here, it sounds to me like Palestine, which I don't care about the 7,000 miles away, but if it's going to energize us to have these type of conversations, great. What she's saying is we see what's happening in Palestine, bombing these people. They only care because they're brown. How brown are they? Are they really brown? They're in the desert. Whatever. That's their mentality. But they care for whatever reason. They do care, and I don't like it. And they're saying, well, why are we doing that? How's that benefit me? And then the Democrat Party and everybody else is saying, we need your black ass to shill for us doing those bombs. And then people are like, no, you don't. I'm good. And then I think that's the root of all of this.
Your stance, you've been suspended. And that is what you're talking about when you're talking about Black administrators and the protests against genocide, etc., in the light of diversity and inclusion. Can you speak more about that? Because you're putting your career on the line, and there's people out there like, what's Palestine got to do with you? So I'm really curious about that.
I'm happy to. And just quick clarification, I'm on probation for a year, specifically for accompanying the students in a sit-in that took place in the spring. And I went in because they were concerned about police brutality that we'd been witnessing at Columbia and other places. And also because up until that point, the administration was really distorting their activities and their motives. And so they wanted a kind of objective faculty observer. But the administration has rejected that status and just said, I was with them. And so now I'm on probation.
Wow.
And so, to think about, again, at the very moment you mentioned the MacArthur, the day
I do respect that, though. She put her career on the line.
Before I received the call from MacArthur
she was probably tenured first. It's real hard to get rid of the tenured professors. You're a made man at that point.
Won this award in September. I had just had a very
but if there's a way to get rid of them, it would be criticizing the tiny hats. If there was a way, that would be it.
Call with the administration that was essentially investigating my role. And so when the award was announced, it was all over the university website, all of the accolades. So they take credit, and at the same time, they're investigating me for basically acting on what I was hired to do.
Damn.
And so they're happy for it to stay theory. They're happy for it to stay on the page. But when you start actually living what you're writing and studying about, then it becomes a problem. And so that is, again, this disjunction between liking things to be controlled in the way that will benefit them. But as soon as you start to challenge them, then they try to put you in your place. Try being the operative word.
Okay.
You spoke about this, in that same address that Cristiano was talking about that went viral. One of the things you speak about as well is these universities and universities in general being quick to suppress people's voices when a protest is happening, but then many years later rewarding those people with honorary degrees. I didn't realize that until you said it. I was like, oh yeah, there's so many people, you name it, like from MLK to Nelson Mandela to where universities, like the institutions, were against them.
Yeah.
And then many decades later, they're like, we would like to honor you, Mr. Mandela, with this degree for the peace work that you've done.
Exactly.
And I wish, like, Nelson Mandela, I wish, like, one time he would have come on and been like, but you were against me. You told me to shut up when I was protesting. But, I mean, I guess you don't want to do it in that moment. But
But I mean, like Alice Walker came to Spelman. She was an undergrad there. She left after a year or two max because they were really against her civil rights activism. And now, of course, she will be touted as a former student, even though she had to go to another school to graduate.
Wow.
So it's,
they're touting the civil rights activism then. See, there's a dissonance here that still needs to be cleaned up.
there's so many cases like that. And all of these schools we're talking about, had students who were against apartheid, who fought, like thinking about South African apartheid. It's like this touchstone in all of these places where they really, in hindsight, they're like, oh yeah, we should have been against that when it was happening. And so now that's like part of the history.
Yeah, they want
students
to
who are
rewrite it.
carrying that tradition, they can't connect the dots.
I'm curious, Ruha, as like Trevor teases me all the time because I'm a bit of a champagne socialist, right?
Yes.
So I'm always very curious about the people that it goes from theory, like you write all these books, to actual praxis. Like you're on probation right now. You're not working because of what you believe in. What is it about you and your history that means you're like, oh, this can't just be what I write about. It has to be what I live.
I respect the self-awareness to say I'm a champagne socialist and not be afraid of that. I respect that a lot.
Yeah. So one is that my work is not tied to the institution. Like I carry on doing the work. This probation is like adult timeout. It's like if you do anything else, quote unquote, unprofessional, as that's the language they use, then you'll really get in trouble. So it's mild compared to those colleagues who have been fired and were tenured and who've been penalized much worse. The other thing is that, I became a professor very reluctantly. Like when I was applying to grad school, my undergrad professors were like, really? You want to get a PhD? Because I was always making trouble. I was always on the activist end of the spectrum. So they were actually surprised that I wanted to pursue this. And literally the day that I turned in my dissertation, I was still questioning. So I've come into this profession reluctantly, never fully.
I believe that. I've never heard of her in my life, but based on these 15 minutes from what she's saying, I believe that.
Wearing that coat tightly. It's always loose. And I always think of myself as like more like a kindergarten teacher in Professor Drag, like I'd much rather be talking to a room full of,
Wow,
kids.
I did not expect to like this. I really enjoy this.
And teenagers, and I do often. And so I think partly is that I don't identify strongly with this very uptight, insulated sort of ideal of what it means to be an academic or professor. I have one foot in the academy and always one foot out. I will never turn to these institutions for my sense of self-worth or self or mission. It's like I don't give them my all, and so they can't take anything from me.
Bars. Oh my, this is dope.
Doing this either.
Wow.
Let's talk a little bit more about institutions themselves, specifically institutions of higher learning. On previous episodes of the podcast, we've talked to, historians like, let's say, Yuval Noah Harari, and, we've talked to people like Ta-Nehisi Coates, and and obviously because of the time we're in, Israel-Palestine comes up, but then many other issues come up, and that one overshadows some of the other conversations that are as prominent in different ways, right? The one thing I found myself wrestling with over the past few months is how universities have failed, in my opinion, to be the bastion of conversation that moves people in a direction. And what I mean by this is, you remember, Cristiano, this was even when we were still at The Daily Show, I didn't like that universities were blocking people like Ben Shapiro from coming to speak, right?
Yeah, of course.
And the reason for it was because at the time people were like, no, we don't want him to come. He's a Nazi. We don't want this, blah, blah, blah. So
Ben Shapiro. It's so funny because it's all relative. The people that are kind of like where I am look at Ben Shapiro as just a complete clown, almost like a leftist to me, to be honest with you. Kind of cosplay, almost like a Ashley St. Clair, kind of like cosplaying as a conservative. And really the only thing he cares about is that one issue. Like Barry Weiss. What's the difference between Ben Shapiro and Barry Weiss? There's no difference. They're both like agents of that country. And they look at him like Yahtzees.
Forget how you feel about him or not. The thing I kept on saying was, if a university cannot immunize its students to the ideas of a quote unquote radical person, let's say, depending on how you look at them,
Mhm.
then what is the point of university? Like, I feel like that's supposed to be the boxing ground where we go. It's almost like you want your kids to come back from school and say, hey, today we fought with each other about apartheid, and, you know, we fought about whether or not people should be segregated, and we fought about, you know, what's happening in the Middle East. But in our school, they teach us how to fight because because there is a constructive way to do it. And I wonder from your perspective, what you think we're missing in higher learning institutions, that now it doesn't seem like the kids or the faculty or the institution itself have the ability to facilitate something that society definitely can't.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, there's layers to it, because I don't necessarily think it's a new phenomenon, that this sort of lack of capacity to engender constructive conversation. I would say that is distinct from the kind of debate bro style of someone like Shapiro, where it is very combative. It's not about us gaining knowledge together, but it's really about me winning.
Oh, it's about owning people.
Yeah, definitely. We should be able to wrestle with difficult conversations. And so I think part of, you know, the exceptionalism around Palestine that we've seen in the last year in particular has a lot to do with the idealization of what the university should be, which it hasn't ever been for the vast majority of people, and really the economic underpinnings of these institutions. You know, one person described it as a hedge fund that offers classes. You know, so to really think about, you know, really this idea.
Oh man, there's so many great moments here that I've never heard that. That is exactly what it is. It's a public, funded with public tax dollars, basically, with the loans. Wow. That is exactly what it is. I'm surprised I never thought of it like that.
Idea that these are this enlightenment model of learning, and so much of it is profit driven, and these profits are deeply intertwined with the military industrial complex, weapons manufacturers. Like, it's not just about disclosing and divesting specifically when it comes to Israel-Palestine, but the fact that these institutions are in bed with the military, so that the calling into—
Damn, she's talking about her employer right now. You never heard me on a live talk about my employer. I gotta get my checks, man. I got mouths to feed.
Question of that entire infrastructure.
I'm saying that because I respect that.
Is really like getting to the foundation of what's holding these places up. And so the crackdown that we think, oh, this is so disproportionate, these students are just trying to talk about this or that, it's because what they're talking about is really getting to the foundations of what's holding these institutions up.
We're going to continue this conversation right after this short break.
So let me fast forward this is the integration, but then this seems interesting. Human beings searching for solutions is where the clip ended, is what it sounds like. Let's go here.
About that, you know?
When I was sitting looking at some of your work, there was one question I wanted to ask you, which is extremely controversial. I'm going to say this ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
But, and I'll preface it with this. I oftentimes think to myself that as human beings, we're searching for solutions to real problems. We very seldom think that we've reached the wrong solution, right? Because we have a good intention. I really believe most human beings do. And in looking at some of your work, your speeches, your writing, and even society itself, even some of the things you're saying now, I found myself wondering, and this applies to America, and then maybe it'll go to other places in a different way because Finland ties in. Do you think that integration was the right move?
So that is the integration. But that setup is kind of important. I'm not going to do the integration again, but the thing that I noticed that I would kind of challenge Trevor Noah on it there is the reason why it feels like everybody has the right solution is because they're not doing first principle thinking. To my knowledge, one of the first steps is identifying the problem you're trying to solve. People have an opinion, and then they say, that's my opinion, which you can't argue somebody's opinion, and that's my solution, basically, is the opinion. So basically, like the transformer ban from the military executive order. I don't think this is not me, but this is somebody saying, I don't think transformers should serve in the military. So then Trump banned them with the executive order. That's why they think the solution always fits the problem, because they're starting with what they want to have happen first. And I don't do that. I'm asking, what is the problem that you want to solve? What is the problem with transformers in the military? Well, is there like a record of them going crazy, or how many of them are there? It's not that many of them. Or did we change like physical standards for them? Obviously, I think you should go with the biological sex, but do you see what I mean? The problem isn't if you ban them, how do you tell if one is? Are we doing checks, or like what are we doing? Maybe you do with a doctor or whatever in the military. I don't know. But that my whole point, I don't even mean to argue in that. My whole point is I start with what is the problem? And with that, no one has articulated the problem for me. When you articulate what the problem is, it's got to be very simple. It's got to be one sentence. It can't be just like a stream of consciousness, almost like a definition. So then you have the problem, then you go to the solution. That's not what people do. People go with, I don't like Transformers. And that's just as whack as any other. What do you mean you don't like Transformers? That's just a vague statement. It's just the same thing as somebody say, I don't like blacks or whatever. You start with the problem, identify it clearly, then you go. So let me listen to what he said again here.
About that, you know?
When I was sitting looking at some of your work, there's one question I wanted to ask you, which is extremely controversial. I'm going to say this ahead of time. And I'll preface it with this. I oftentimes think to myself that as human beings, we're searching for solutions to real problems. We very seldom think that we've reached the wrong solution, right? Because we have a good intention. I really believe most human beings do. And
because if you start with the solution, you'll always have the right solution. That's what's happening.
And in looking at some of your work, your speeches, your writing, and even society itself, even some of the things you're saying now, I found myself wondering, and this applies to America, and then maybe it'll go
So let me go back. So I want the context for it. Let me go back and see how they got into the integration discussion.
Accountable to each other. So I think hand in hand with this worldview is this idea that we have to build a social fabric that when I hurt you, I'm both going to be accountable to, and I'm going to take action to ensure it doesn't happen again. So when it comes to school and what we would call like the school to prison pipeline and all the ways that we incorporate in carceral processes and logics in school, including suspension and detention and all of these things, it's a lack of creativity. It's a lack of thinking, how else could we organize this such that
I agree 100% with that.
we don't cut off people who have a bad day or are, sort of wrestling with something and can't express why it is, so they act out in this way. There's examples of schools and communities that are experimenting with that. And a lot of it comes down to, again, this prioritization of order and
But see, this is where, I don't know what level of school she's talking about, but detention, obviously, it's probably K through 12. Well, then my challenge to you is President Trump, Elon Musk, other people say, well, we got to get rid of the Department of Education. Are they helping this? What's their role in this? If they don't have a role in this, and I did a reaction to Destiny, then maybe we should get rid of them. If the whole purpose, what is the purpose of the Department of Education? So let's start with the problem. She's starting with the problem of a lack of creativity. Well, then I'm looking, if we have a lack of creativity, yet billions of dollars are going to this federal organization, what do they do? What are they contributing here? And I want to know what her thoughts are, because I'm hearing people on this side, I don't want to put it on her, but on the other side of me saying they're protecting, they want the Department of Education, and I don't hear the argument for keeping it.
Excellence over really play and imagination, and thinking about the fact that oftentimes the first things to go from many schools when there's budget cuts, recess and art, like the very places that people would be able to have self-expression. And even our language of like Black excellence, like as something to strive for, has a huge underside, I
support I support white excellence. I would support excellence of all groups.
Going back to what we're joking about, the kind of like Nigerian parents, like there's so much that gets lost and repressed and
I didn't hear that part. We skipped over a little bit. They're probably talking about what I talked about with the Nigerian parents, are very similar to the Asian parents, some of the Middle Eastern, Indian ones. They don't play when it comes to books and reading and school. And when they come here and they see the Blacks doing whatever the Blacks are doing in general, they don't want anything to do. They don't want their kids around it. They don't want none of that.
Counted when we strive for a very narrow form of achievement. There's so many forms of intelligence and genius and creativity that gets shut down that we never get to experience, because we want everyone to sit behind their desk for 8 hours a day, raise their hand, walk in line, And so part of it is to rethink even what we consider education and excellence and achievement, because everyone could ultimately benefit from those changes.
So I love that idea.
So if we have a Department of Education in the executive branch, shouldn't that be like their primary focus? What is the point of this organization? They don't do any of that.
But I still say I should have been expelled. Okay. No, and I'll tell you why. So I think this is one of the main things that we struggle with in society. Unfortunately, we are always at the mercy of, the average. Right. And that's most systems. You're working at the mercy of the average. If a car is too high, it cannot drive into a parking garage. Right. If something is too wide, it cannot fit into an aisle, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think of like schools. Schools are a crazy novel concept when you think about it. Right. You design like one building where like 1,000 odd people can come in, and all of them are learning and all of them are coming together. Where before it was just like little community, few people, you learn what you can, we do what we can. And we blew this thing out for good and for bad. Right. So what I mean by I should have been expelled actually agrees with a lot of what you're saying. I think that you have to expel Trevor from that environment because he's not good for that environment. And so I think sometimes maybe the word expel has a different connotation. I don't think of expelled as like, no, they hurt me.
Yeah.
No, they kicked me out.
Yeah, you got a free day. You
No,
got a free
and
week.
let me tell you why I say this.
Trevor, you're so traumatized.
No,
We're traumatized
no,
African kids. No, you shouldn't have been
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. When you talk about accountability, there is no world where exclusion will not be part of it. It's quite impossible. The mere act of singling a person out is excluding them already. So if you have 10 kids together, you tell them all to keep quiet and draw. One stands up and screams. Even by saying to them, come over here, let me speak to you, you have expelled them from the group and you have excluded them, right? Now, your intention may be, oh, I'm going to make them feel good. I'm going to now encourage them. Hey, maybe you play a little bit more. But even when we create this new space for them, that encourages that, they are excluded from the group because they go like, no, I want to be in the drawing group. And you're like, no, but you're not a drawer.
But the teacher having the conversation, like bringing them aside to restore them back.
This is a deep conversation because now they're talking about, because usually from people that are opposite of me, they're typing up inclusion. He's saying exclusion is a part of life. So they're going the opposite direction of the whole last 4 years. I mean, 8 years, basically.
To the group, yes, but it's different from bringing them to the side to banish them from the group.
But this is what I don't like. This is what I don't like.
Restoration?
No, you guys are trying to brainwash me. This is what I don't like. And I mean it. This is what I think is the problem. Is they go, let us bring them aside, and then we'll try and turn them into the drawers. And it's like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, and that's why I agree with you in a large part of what you're saying. And maybe that's why I'm a fan of the
Elon Musk. That's his idea for his, I forgot the name of what he called his university idea. I don't know if he ever got that off the ground, but the idea of the school that Elon Musk was going to start, it was I think it's named after a constellation or something like that. Ad Astra or something like that. That's it. What they're talking about is that's the thing. So maybe you should stop the hate for, I mean, I've got beef with Elon, but life is complicated. There are some things you would agree with Elon Musk on, I think.
upside of AI, if it doesn't kill us all, okay, is because the average needs to be the average. This is how any system works. You just need to find a way for the anomalies to exist. And it's hard to cater to all of them. But when you exclude somebody, I don't believe in trying to get them back in. No, I mean it. I mean it because they're not of the in. The more you try and put me as Trevor back into that classroom, the more I'm going to be disruptive. And that's why I love imagination. Let me, for the record, state, you can go and see me. That's why I love your book. I love your ideas. I'm a big fan of the imagining because I go, imagine a world where you could have expelled Trevor to a school. Like they did with Harry Potter and them. Essentially, that's a school for the gifted. You go like, yo, man, you magic kids, you need to be separate. All these other kids, they don't do magic. We're going to put you in a magic school. And then you find community in and amongst magic and magicians. Does that make sense? So I'm saying you should be expelled. And I'm saying what we need to imagine is where we take expelled people to, as opposed to trying to bring them back into the thing.
So a couple of things. One is, you know, if the kind of phenomenon you're describing of people being pulled out or expelled.
I'm sorry, I've heard enough. I'm probably going to nominate this as pod of the year I've been writing down. So I have the Destiny pod that I did with, what's his name? Happy Gamer, or whatever his name is. Healthy Gamer GG or whatever his name is. That was one of my pods of the year. Bill Maher and Matt Gaetz is another pod of the year. And then this would be my third one so far.
Let's say if it was an equal opportunity expelling, you know, where all kids were treated with the same level of scrutiny, et cetera, that would be one conversation. But what you're describing is there's a very strong selection effect in terms of which young people's behavior is deemed so troublesome as to warrant expelling. We have very stark disparities in the percentage of Black students, Native students, et cetera, who are expelled. And if you look country by country, there's another level to this where the rates of punishment that we think of as normal, let's say in South Africa or the US or et cetera, somehow magically other societies have been able to organize their schooling such that they don't have those outcomes. They're not expelled. So what we normalize and think this is the only way we can deal with this issue of the average and gifted, et cetera, somehow it's not universal. That should be a clue for us that it's possible to approach education in a way that's not like a factory, you know, where we're graduating batches of kids. And if you have any little problem with the product, you have to pull it aside. And so partly is to really rethink our model of education that we've inherited as normal and say, what if we could approach things in a way that wasn't so mechanical?
And what Trevor Noah is saying is AI will help with that. He didn't want to go down the tangent, but when he said AI, I know exactly what he's talking about. I mean, AI could be used to analyze every student and basically say, these are the groups that will foster, these are the strengths in these students. If your goal is that you want to foster the strengths, take these students and put them in together, they're going to foster a strong community in drawing, artistic, playing instruments, or whatever skill is.
Wasn't so rigid from the start, right? And so and we don't have to, we don't have to come up with scratch because there's other places that are already doing this. One of the examples that I've discussed is how in Finland, like kids, they're not really focused on reading and math, et cetera, until the kids are older. They really take play seriously. So the teachers are like studying the kids' play, and like getting all these lessons.
Which tells you everything, by the way. That's something I've learned from therapists and like great teachers.
Yeah.
Play tells you everything.
Yeah.
Play tells you everything. And so they're really taking it seriously. And what's so kind of paradoxical in a way is that when they administer these universal tests across countries, to rank which country is doing better or worse, Finland out-tests all the other countries. Like a place that's not focused on testing, that's focused on play and imagination and expression and cooperation and learning how to fight, learning how to compete,
They get to it later on the clip we played, but Finland is, let's just say, of the same type of people.
So it's not it's not kumbaya. It's like,
Trevor brought it up. So you see the context of that clip. She brought up Finland first. And the same thought I had is the same thought Trevor had. Yeah, Finland, you're right. You have a point about Finland. And he agrees with everything she's saying, but it is important to note Japan, Finland, these are homogeneous countries, nationalist in nature.
we manage conflicts. If you can't practice that as a kid, like, of course you don't have adults that can do that. If you don't learn how to negotiate that when you're younger and you always have a teacher to step in and say, pull this aside, pull Trevor aside, expel him. No, let's figure out how to conflict and fight productively in a way that we can, so part of it is to recognize that spending time and investing in this actually leads to happier, more well-rounded human beings and people who can take tests.
So these, so far, just from what I've heard, these are the type of black discussions I like. I hate the forced, I have to try to be black. That's Jasmine Crockett, Cori Bush, Nina Turner. Just absolute trash. They're non-intellectuals, just bottom of the barrel trash as far as a productive conversation. Kendrick Lamar's performance at the halftime show and damn near what he's become. That's not what Kendrick Lamar was when he first started. Was this black everything type of dude. It's just ridiculous. They're more authentic to me.
Really care about that,
When I was sitting looking at some of your work, there's one question I wanted to ask you, which is extremely controversial.
So that was the lead into it. And then that most played is
in Japan. And again, it's one of those places that people think, it's homogenous. It's, from the outside.
She mentioned Japan. Okay, that's after the clip. I didn't hear that in the clip.
Is to recognize all of the things that have been made up, but made to seem immutable, fixed, intrinsic, inclusive, progressive. Like, of course, we don't want segregation. But again, when you're being integrated into institutions.
So I'm trying to find the end of the clip that we started with. I think that's where we are right now. So to get the context, you've got to get before and after.
Culture that's a supremacist culture, that's a culture that feeds off of hierarchy, that feeds off of insecurity, anxiety. Why are we being integrated into that?
See, that's probably the only thing so far I've kind of really strongly disagreed with is she's feeding into this supremacist culture thing. And even when I talk about the hats, I've heard some people say like the hat supremacy, you're never going to hear me say that. Because I just don't like how that feels. Nobody's supreme to me, and I don't care if they think they are supreme to me. So I would never label somebody as, that's a defeatist type of term. But that's where she's going here with that. And it's kind of like, she's saying I don't want to be integrated because I'm integrated with supremacists. That's not the first time I really can say you're off of where I'm at.
And so part of it is to question what we're being invited into. And so again, when you think about the example of Finnish being homogenous, nation states are imagined. The national identity is not something that is, God-given. It's not something that, existed for eternity. These identities were created, maintained, made durable over time. So,
wait, are they talking nationalist talk now? Maybe they're talking like black nationalists, which I actually think is much more based than this, whatever we have, this fake pro-black stuff.
Part of the stretching our imagination is to recognize all of the things that have been made up, but made to seem immutable, fixed, intrinsic, including our national sort of identities. And so part of it is really like to denaturalize the things that we take for granted as somehow magically operating to make us feel connected to each other and ask ourselves, how else can we be connected to engender the sense of solidarity where what I want for my kids, I also want for my neighbor's kids. I want for the kids who don't speak English. I want for the kids who are just arriving. And so again, to push ourselves, when you think about expanding our imagination, to make it more embracing of seeming differences that are not intrinsic, that are not something that are inevitable. My sister-in-law lives in Japan. And again, it's one of those places that people think, oh, it's homogenous. It's, from the outside, people think everyone is, a shared identity.
Yeah.
But Japanese of Korean descent, among many other groups, are treated like shit. They're treated, discriminated in so many different areas of life and education and healthcare. When two people go to marry, sometimes their families do a deep genealogical dive to find any Korean descent in the line before and so again, we are so creative in creating hierarchies and distinctions out of nothing, know?
Yeah, you're going against what Trevor was saying, though.
Why can't we channel that creativity to actually work in the...
That's why I think he looked awkward there, because she's acting like she's flowing with him, and then she's not, though.
Opposite direction. If we're doing it to maintain hierarchies and division, perhaps we can do it to engender solidarity and connection, right? And I think it's a choice. When we give up our power and think, oh, this is something happening to us, we have to just navigate this crooked system as it is. I think, that only serves those who are currently benefiting from the status quo. And so I always have to ask myself, who does my pessimism serve?
I don't know what to say to that. That's amazing.
This is what I'll say to that is that I think a lot of this was inspired by me looking into your story, how you were raised, the many places you were raised, and how I think that influenced your life. The Marshall Islands, for instance, is something. It's funny how sometimes in life you start to experience.
They talk about AI here. I'm going to fast forward to right here. They talk about AI. Let's hear this.
Considered beautiful or not, like you had a great conversation about weight. Like thinness is not fetishized everywhere in the world, And so that just tells us, oh, this thing that we think of as universal and inevitable in a different context, there's a whole different set of, these parallel realities in a way. And I was a sci-fi nerd starting at about a teenager, moving to the Marshall Islands, like only thing being able to watch is Star Trek and realizing, like we are very adept at creating these parallel universes. And part of it is to be able to like step in and out and see, okay, this is not working for us in this reality that we currently live.
Yeah.
Why don't we change it? Why don't we, work with other, and it's not like we have to start from scratch. Let me show you. I'll peek into this other reality and show you they're doing something completely different with education or with accountability and safety or with healthcare. And so, part of it is not to get so locked into one way of perceiving things. And I think that childhood of having to move every 5 or 6 years was the classroom that I needed to be able to do that.
Don't go anywhere, because we got more What Now after this.
So Trevor over here is a real AI enthusiast, and I am a tech nerd.
I could tell. I didn't know that, but when he brought it up, I could tell he was.
Like I'm a Luddite. He talks a lot about like the transformative possibilities of AI. I'm terrified. Now I know.
And also the reality. I mean, if you even rewind this exact conversation.
No, it's grounded. But because he's an optimist in nature, he has a very optimistic view of AI.
Yeah.
And I know your work with the new Jim Code. You speak a lot about like racist robots and all of these things. I don't want you to feed into my technophobia. I want you to describe this world. If we use our imagination to its fullness, what could AI perhaps do for us that's really good?
I think that there are many different types of AI. And the one that people often think about is artificial intelligence. That's the one that people are excited about. That's the one getting all the funding, all the hype. Yeah. And my little soapbox is to say that there are other types of AI that we need to be prioritizing, investing in, not necessarily to get rid of the first kind, the artificial kind completely, but to really put it in its place. I personally think it's getting too much space, attention, investment as it is. And so ancestral intelligence is one thing that I think of as an important type of AI that has to do with collective wisdom, know-how, the insights and experiences of people who have to learn how to navigate the underside of society, who are constantly buried under the rubble of so-called progress. So there's the kinds of knowledges that grow in that rubble that are often discounted as backwards, as no longer needed, as, in the past that I think...
That's a part of the regular, it's not... I know some people who are really into AI, they kind of literally cringe back when you say AI, when we're not really talking about AI. We're talking about these large language models, basically, like ChatGPT and stuff. But what she's talking about is a part of it. I don't know why she's separating it.
We need to center. The other type of AI is abundant imagination. Like, again, going back to thinking about what often the artificial type of AI is displacing our ability to actually use our imaginations and creativity rather than just plugging in prompts and getting the outputs. The other thing is that what appears so efficient...
I agree with that.
And convenient and magical about artificial intelligence hides the fact that there are people behind these screens that are doing the grunt work to make these systems work. And this labor is outsourced to places like Kenya, to places like the Philippines, in which workers are there doing the content moderation, doing the work that on our end seems like, wow, this is just a...
I agree with that too.
Sentient being. No, there are armies of laborers that are making these systems go, and they're being mistreated. They're having a mental health toll because they're often seeing the worst of the worst in order to clean these systems and the internet. So anyone who is a proponent of AI, the first kind, artificial, they need to have an answer or have a reckoning with the human dimensions, the human cost.
I'll have to be honest with her. She's right. And I mean, this is not going to sound good, but I don't care. I mean, I'm focused about America. I just have to think through that, because it is a kind of like of a warfare. Like, and I don't know if it's warfare. outsourcing. I'll have to get a better idea of who's being outsourced to do what, like content moderation. I've already said that should be in the States. I never said that. I never supported a Jeet or a Kenyan or a Philippine, or they outsourced to Jamaica too, Mexico, to do content moderation. Those jobs are going to go away at some point, and they're going to really consolidate. And I don't even support them coming here. This is the H-1B visa discussion. So she's saying that you have to solve for abusing their labor. But I mean, that's been a problem. The phones and everything is based off of basically slave labor. So, I'm trying to reconcile my thoughts with, a certain country bombing innocent women and children. Is that comparable to me using a cell phone? And the batteries that are powered in Tesla and all these other devices. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that one. I'll have to think about it.
The labor and also the environmental costs of these systems, the energy, the water usage to simply train one algorithm. At one point, a study at MIT said it was equivalent to the lifespan of 5 cars. So it's not to say you have.
She's based. She's smart. I got to figure out who she is. This is dope. I don't know who she is, but I haven't heard. There's not many blacks that I hear nowadays, and I'm like, you're based other than Candace Owens. So I need to figure this out. We speak with professor, sociologist, and MacArthur Fellowship winner, Ruha Benjamin. See, I didn't care about your doctorate or your MacArthur Fellowship. When you started talking, that's when you got my respect. This is Ruha Benjamin. Let's go back to the clip.
To be against it, but you need to reckon with the costs of creating these systems, the human, the environmental, in a way that's taken seriously.
It's based.
Yeah, I think that's the difficulty with AI, right? Is, I've heard some people say AI is like the atom bomb. When we made the atom bomb, we didn't consider all the things. I disagree with that for a few reasons. One, because the atom bomb could not think or create or do, right? And I use think in inverted commas, okay? It could not generate, is what I mean. And more importantly, the atom bomb had only one use. Do you know what I mean? Even when they were making it, they weren't like, and it'll help you cook your food. No. Everyone knew what the bomb was for.
How does that work with the nuclear power, though? I'm not an expert there. I don't know.
There was no other purpose. There was no other intention. The difficulty with AI is that we have something that puts us on the precipice of everything that we haven't even imagined, right? So here's a simple example, and I credit you, Cristiano, with this. Like, you're the person who came into my life kicking down doors, telling me to consider women's health more and more and more and more. You know what I mean? Like, just kicking down my door at the Daily Show and being like, do you know what it is to be a woman? Do you know the pain?
Endometriosis.
Yeah, endometriosis. Do you know that? And I was like, oh man, I gotta pay attention to this stuff. Like, Cristiano's right, but in a good way, because you're my friend,
Exactly.
And so I think of the conversations I've had with a professor at Johns Hopkins who has shown me the AI that they use to detect breast cancer in women long before it would have ever been humanly possible to detect it. And sometimes even more importantly, to prevent false positives. You know how many women are getting mastectomies, but they don't have any type of cancer? And it's like, well, thanks for...
It's not just women, but yeah, of course. That's great.
Playing, folks. Here's the debt, here's your healthcare bill, and you actually didn't have this thing. I look at that just in one space, right? I look at it in the world of education. A teacher is a finite resource. AI is the first thing we've seen where you could genuinely have a teacher for your child, and it isn't tied to the money that your child has, right? And I know some people
that this conversation is really shocking me. That is exactly what I've been saying. That is a populist tool. It takes power from a central location and divvies it up to everyone. You could do homeschooling. I told the story, and I didn't tell the follow-up to it. My kid came home, my oldest, eight, never had any bad grades or anything from school coming up. He's only in 3rd grade, so. But for the first time, I came home, he took his paper out the bag, his test out the bag, and I saw a lot of markups on it. So that was a new feeling for me. I was like, I kind of took it for granted that he'd been doing his thing. And if you don't know, I was a math major in another world over 20 years ago. So if I mess up 2 + 2, whatever, clown me. But so I was like, don't. I basically told him, don't get that tablet. Put the tablet down. He didn't get it, but don't even worry about that tablet till we figure out what's happening here. You're not in trouble. You're not in trouble or anything. We just got to figure out what happened. So I scanned it with my phone, scanned the test, it wasn't even a big scanning app, just took the pictures, put it in ChatGPT, and I said, ChatGPT, this is my kid's work. And he wrote it out by hand, and it still read it. And I said, what do I need to do? What is the number one thing that he's struggling with? And it was like, boom, boom, I forget the exact, it was word problems. And it was like they narrowed in. This is the first thing that he needs to get. He was doing fractions and stuff. And then I was like, man, that's dope. So I made a whole page of that first thing. And I was like, what's the second thing I should go over? And I'm a math major. I could have done it myself, but my point is you got the teacher there and the follow. So we went through that and we knocked it out. There were some rough spots where we had to go, wait, are you thinking about it? He has a little bit of potentially attention deficit kind of stuff where he's like all over the place. I probably have it too. But so teaching him focus. What's the punchline of the word problem? What are they asking? No, I need you to be more specific. So we went through that, I printed out the worksheet that ChatGPT created, and we went through it. We're like, good. Just came home a few days ago, got every question right except for one. And it was just from one session with ChatGPT. That's something you would have had to pay a tutor. Now, you do have to have a little bit of money, but the ChatGPT, you probably could do it with the free version. I pay for it, quite a bit for it, but I think you can still do that with the free version. And then eventually there's going to be open source free versions. There already are, but they're not very user friendly. So now in the past, you would have had to pay a tutor to sit down and do all that. Would have taken longer. And now you can do it. To go from start to finish, to print out the new test for him to practice, to work on where he didn't understand and narrow it in and clean it up. To print that out, it took like an hour. Amazing stuff. That's what he's talking about.
But it's still out of reach. It is in many ways. It is. But the average cost for processing a transaction, even in the conversations we've had since 2022, has gone down 95%, just cost-wise. So the accessibility has accelerated. And the one thing that I keep grappling with is this. Yes, we know that it's using up energy, because it is. It is.
Yeah.
But it is also the thing that has helped data centers optimize how much energy they use. And so data centers that before were just like these little hubs, little ovens cooking up all of our cloud information, those data centers can save up to 25, 30% of their energy bill. So it's this weird situation where, you have something that you're making, and you have to make the thing to try and help you fix the thing. And finding that balance is where I go, that's the real. But the reason I'm optimistic about it is because it has another use. It has a good purpose. It has and that doesn't discount the other things. And one last thing I'll say, I'd love to know what you think about this, Ruel, because I know you are a techie like me, is the thing I love about AI or tech in general is that it's bustable, which is not a word, but it's like you can bust it. Okay?
Wait, what did you mean?
If you say to me as Trevor, I'm going to put you in front of a judge, and this judge is going to rule on your life. If I go, this judge was biased, the judge goes, no, I wasn't biased. We talk about, we had this back in the day, and we still see these. You type an image, black person on the internet. Oftentimes the image that'll come up, black man. It'll be a guy, mugshot, dangerous looking,
or a chimpanzee.
Or chimpanzee, yes. And then you go, white man, and it'll show you an Ivy League, like Abercrombie and Fitch. Okay. But what I'm saying is, unlike humans, you can actually find that and see it and code against it. You cannot with humans. I cannot prove it with a human. We've lived in a world for so long where we've gone, you discriminate. And the person's like, no, I do not. And we're like, all right, well, fun conversation. Thanks for playing.
You're saying AI can't gaslight us?
No. I'm saying we can, because we have data now.
Yep.
And the data, I'm not saying the world becomes.
That's what we do when you ask AI, if you had to save somebody and it was this person X and this person Y, which one would you save? He's absolutely right. It creates a world where the AI will be biased because it will have the bias of the programmer, but you can hone in on the bias. And that's all perspective too, but he's absolutely right.
It's perfect. But I'm saying it becomes a lot easier to get to a more perfect place when the thing that we're using is itself not personal and then has data that we can work off of.
This is the Grimes rant that I keep bringing up, that for whatever reason, people didn't understand what she was talking about with AI bringing in communism. But this is what she meant. She was absolutely right.
And that's why I'm hopeful. Okay? I'm not a person who's like, this is going to be the best thing ever. I'm saying there are many places that could be better.
Yeah.
And
this isn't communism, but that's what she meant when she said it. And when she said communism, because she took it from this place to the place where nobody really has to work anymore, which you could get to that. But her theory, her idea was right.
Hopeful because we can catch it when it's not, in a way that with humans, we just flat out could not, because you couldn't prove it.
And I do think that one of the ways that I think of these technologies as useful is, as Trevor described, as a mirror.
Yes.
But that presumes that people are motivated by data and facts and information, like by that seeing is believing. And we know through studies that have presented hard data to people to show them this disparity exists, this inequality exists. Seeing that information or data often has them double down on whatever their priors were.
I know, but what's your point, though? I don't understand your point. That doesn't refute anything Trevor said. And that will never change. That's how humans operate.
There was a study out of Stanford a few years ago. They presented data on incarceration to white Americans in San Francisco and New York. Said, look at these Black people being warehoused at disproportionate rates in our jails and prisons. And when they were exposed to the data, they became more supportive of the policies that were creating that effect.
No, so see, I disagree here because what Trevor's saying, and Trevor's just playing along here. Yeah, she's again going against Trevor, which is fine, but he's not really challenging her, which he doesn't have to. But what Trevor's saying is it goes against that whole race, white, black thing. Because you could basically try to put all the data from the lives of the people in prison and figure out what the story is through the data for each person. That's why whoever has the data has the power. They can say, well, it can basically estimate, well, with all these, especially if you get 1 million prisoners or something like that, and say, well, yeah, the father not being in the home is a big thing. And why is the father not in the home? And that type of stuff to kind of break it down.
Stop and frisk in New York, 3 strikes law in California. And so partly is to reckon with, yes, these systems can be a reflection of society.
But those are opinions. Just because you have data, Dr. Ruha Benjamin, doesn't mean we interpret the data the same. You're looking at white and black incarceration and saying, it looks like you're going a critical race theory route. And I will go if that's the right route, I will go there, but I'm not sold on that. And that's the interpretation of data.
But the facts alone will not save us. This is not, people are not simply motivated by information, but by stories, stories. But then when it comes to like the examples you offered, which I think are really important, whether in healthcare, you talked about the breast cancer screening, or in education, more tailored learning. There are, again, studies that are showing that many of these systems are just reproducing and hiding existing problems in these institutions or in these industries. In healthcare, there was an audit a few years ago where they looked at a widely used healthcare algorithm that was discriminating against Black patients because it was trained on data in which doctors were not offering adequate services and time to their Black patients. So
she's very scared of the AI because as AI rises up, this whole leverage of this blackness stuff goes away. So she sounds terrified.
Smarter the algorithms get, the more racist and sexist they often become. Like,
oh, okay. You see how we're getting? She's scared. She's scared that the AI will expose, well, some things are genetic, some things are how they are. No, there's not really a bias here. You just got to learn how to read a book. Yeah, instead of doing this is what needs to be done. And this group, this people here don't value that. What do you want me to do? That's what the AI would do. And she's worried about that. It's scary for her.
Intelligence is like learning.
Well,
this is how you
can become.
Yeah, not inevitably.
I think that's the key distinction for me.
Not inevitable. So there's another counter example. And
See, Trevor does not, it doesn't look like Trevor agrees with her.
Is a positive one, I think, that sort of lends itself to your optimism, is that a group of researchers said, okay, we understand this phenomenon, it's getting reproduced in these systems. So what they did was trained AI, not on doctors, the official medical reports, but they trained the system to predict what a patient would say about their own experience of pain. So the AI's intelligence was based on patients' own self-reports.
Oh, wow.
So it didn't have that anti-Black bias that is embedded in those doctors' reports. So it was not only more accurate, but less biased. So
that's his story, her story. She's worried about, I haven't talked about critical race theory in a long time because I'm just not interested anymore. But this is a tenet of critical race theory. His story, her story is always true. She's worried that AI will say, no, it's not. And AI is not biased. That's Trevor, before she started going, Trevor's like, it will make sure it will be, we can uncover kind of and be unbiased with it. We can uncover biases. So what Trevor did indirectly was say, maybe her story is biased. Maybe she really wasn't experiencing racism and maybe she was just bad at her job. AI, if it has the data, it can say that. That's what's going on here. She's really worried about what's going to happen to his story, her story.
The lesson. It matters where we go looking for the data, the knowledge that we're training these systems on. If we only train them on the official records or the official data without being more creative and thinking.
After this, I am going to do the Elon Trump interview. I'm feeling good.
What is being left out? What perspectives aren't in the official record that we need to actually train these systems on? Then, in this case, the embodied knowledge of patients who know what they're feeling and whose pain is often discounted. We have to.
What's up, Jordan Lott? Take a pause to say what's up in the chat. Ket's Dead says Gronk 3 was released today. And I haven't even used it. I haven't used the Gemini Live yet, and I think I subscribe to that. Just a waste of money. Probably have to cancel that because I'm not using it at all. ChatGPT hasn't gone down in a while. Not for a long time. ChatGPT is doing everything I need it to do unless I hear something. I'll probably start. I use Gronk every once in a while for the image. So I subscribe to X, so I have access to it, but ChatGPT, I got a rhythm with ChatGPT, and right now I'm not going to break that unless I see somebody doing something that I can't do. I have Perplexity, I have Gemini, I have Grok, I have ChatGPT. I used to have Claude. What was the Claude one? I forgot the name of the website. I don't even use that anymore. I don't have any use for it anymore. At one point, it was writing a little bit better, but I don't use it anymore. And I have Perplexity, which uses all of them, which even uses DeepSeek, which I haven't used DeepSeek other than through Perplexity, which I'm not as impressed as everybody else. I think what it was is more the energy saving stuff, which is important, but as a user, I don't see the benefit of that like right away. So, cool. Crazy 2020 says crazy eyes. What's up, Jordan Lott? What's up, brother? Libertarian. Yo, there's a party with the awesome libertarians. Heck yeah, let's freaking go. Let's get back to the clip. CHX noticed, does the professor have her books sorted by color? Very observant. It looks like it.
Turn our attention and be more creative about, again, what even counts as knowledge. And so many of the things in education are trying to predict whether students are going to graduate or be successful or whether they're at risk, and they're reproducing the categories. Like if I say, guess which students are deemed higher risk by these AI systems,
Right,
you know
right.
who that's going to be. In my view, rather than pointing it to the students, let's figure out which adults are creating risks for these students.
We can do both. She's really scared. Just go with the data. And she seems very smart. You can analyze yourself. Her biases are showing right now to me, and see whether you believe the data or not. That's up to you. And I think that is a fair question. Is there a correlation with who's helping the student? It takes a lot of data for that, though. If there's any reason why you think they will put cameras into a classroom, it will be for this. Cameras with video and audio. I'm not for cameras in the classroom, but if you did have cameras in the classroom, you could feed that data to AI LLM and learn a lot.
Let's train the AI to figure out which fields and departments are creating a hostile environment for these young people. But we never turn the lens to the...
It's a tool. You'll be able to do that. You can do that. When you have the tool, I can use it for what I need to use it for, and you can use it for what you need to use it for.
Those who actually have the power to shape the experience, we always look at the most vulnerable and label them and stigmatize them.
Can I tell you, that's just an amazing one to just jump in on. Can you imagine, because I love this idea now, imagine if we designed a system, which is not very hard, and you actually looked at judges. Actually, if someone goes to this judge, they have a higher chance of going back into the system. And then I love this because then you shift the blame.
Exactly.
So you're like, actually, there are 10 judges.
Wow, Trevor, really smooth there. Trevor does not agree with anything she just said there. And he smoothly brought it back to, no, it's going to expose biases. And I think you might like this. Because what he's saying is, I already know where he's going. He's probably going to go to the black thing. What he's hinting at is, do we see that a judge, when we look at everything equal, if we have enough data, AI will be able to do that. And it will say, Judge Schultz here, looks like if it's all things considered equal, you don't want to be a Mexican in front of him because that's a wrap. That's what he's saying right here. And then he's hoping that Ruha will see that and kind of agree with him.
3, with their sentencing, we've noticed that the people actually don't come back into the system, and we look at what their sentencing is, and you're like, oh, these judges seem to look at you as a human, they're more compassionate, they give you, maybe they do, as you said, they hold you accountable, but they don't think of the most punitive measure, et cetera, so they're still a judge. Then we look at another group and we're like, hey, you guys on the other end, these 3, we noticed that everyone that you incarcerate, your rate has the highest rate of recidivism. So actually, we don't think you're good for the system because you don't seem to be doing the thing that the other judges are doing. And I love that idea. I really love that idea.
Amazing.
And so that's why I say I think we agree on a lot of it.
He said, I think we agree on a lot of it. I love that idea. He disagreed. I will bet you he disagreed with most of everything she said.
Because I do like that you can do that. So for instance, here's a simple example. When we talk about AI, we talk about this big thing, this massive thing. But going to some of the things we've spoken about in this conversation, the UAE is building their own. And so they have one that is going to be trained on whether it's religion in the Middle East, whether it's the...
Yeah, it's a weapon no different than a Thule or, pistol or whatever, a bat, it's a weapon. You can use it to spin it and juggle. Somebody else can use it to, everybody's going to have their own. You're going to see the MAGA type of AI. That's what we're already seeing with DOGE. That's all DOGE is. DOGE is an AI operation. That's all it is.
The histories in the Middle East, the cultures, but their data set is going to be more focused on their world. And many people who work in the field have said, the future is not going to be one grand AI. In fact, if you look at most of the data, AGI looks like it's a scam that's just getting people to put more money in, right?
Yeah.
I don't agree with that. I think we eventually will get, I don't know when. AGI is basically like Cylons in Battlestar Galactica.
The real thing that it looks like, which this is what I'm hopeful for and optimistic about, is not that there is an AI. It is more that every country, for instance, will be able to have its AI.
Well, every person.
Every community will be able to have its AI. So you can go, oh, I'm Nigerian, I'm Igbo, I'm this. I'm going to put all these pieces together, and my AI, within the context of my world, is able to give me everything that I need because it has the context of who I am and who my people have been. And I think that, for me, is like one of the most magical ideas of context contributing to culture. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I get what you mean. But you know me, I'm just scared of the machine.
By the way, what's your favorite tech? Are you still techie, or did you switch it out for all books? You just went full books?
No,
because I know you have a lot of books.
I'm still hybrid. I'm hybrid. Yeah. I don't know what I would say.
The books definitely look like they're color coordinated.
Actually, I'll tell you, I just came out of hosted a 2-day VR exhibit. I wasn't really for a VR. I've written about it and how it's manipulated.
Wow, and she's into tech too. I like this a lot.
And used for like trauma porn, etc. But
Right.
I'm collaborating with an amazing team that's working on a project called Phoenix of Gaza. It's a VR exhibit that has footage from the last few years in Gaza before the devastation, many cultural everyday activities, weddings, sewing groups, children playing, people doing sharing poetry, and also now in the aftermath of this genocide.
So that's when the country that I am very, very, very much against, they are the best at this. Everybody supporting Trump and Elon right now are supporters of that country. Palantir and the whole movement with AI, with open AI and all that. They are the best at it. So they're going to have their own propaganda, like it could be a Holocaust thing or something like that. The question will be is, can you trust the presentation of the virtual reality, or is it going to be used? Because you can also use AI to say, I want people to be on the side of the Palestinians. What do you think they'll need to see? And you can even customize it. What I need to see might be different than what you need to see, and it could customize it for that. So it can be used as a weapon, obviously, against you as well. So for me, I like this idea, but for me, it's got to be real footage. I don't want Schindler's List. Otherwise, you're just doing Schindler's List with VR.
And so this is where you enter the world. It's very different from seeing something on film or on screen. Like the kids are looking at you eye to eye. Like you're standing over the shoulder of a teenager reciting poetry passionately. You're with a little boy on a skateboard going on the beach. He has the camera, and
you can do the same for the country I don't like too, though. And so it doesn't mean I don't like the people in the country. It's just the country as a whole. So you can do that both ways. I mean, I'm not saying I'm against it, but she's passionate about it, and we're off a little bit here.
You're riding with him. And so this experience of entering this world is one thing, but it's the fact that it's created by and for Palestinians. And I think it matters who's creating these technologies with what values and goals in mind. Like, the stories that they're telling are about preservation. It's about rebuilding. It's about having now the footage of churches that have been demolished, mosques that have been demolished.
I don't want the story as told by Palestinians, though, because that's obviously going to be biased.
But having the architecture there, in this 360 camera, with the idea that we are going to go home and we are going to rebuild this. And so the Phoenix of Gaza XR project is one of the few, of these kind of emerging technology projects that I think of as truly liberatory, in that the goal is to, engender self-determination and cultural preservation and a right to return.
I've been wrestling with this idea, and some of it has been inspired by conversation, some of it has just been reading, learning, etc., about how much responsibility everybody bears for how they frame every single conversation they have, right? And the reason I think about it is because, in our conversation, we've touched on ideas of intention, culture, power, perception, all of these things. And I can't help but think about Israel, Palestine, and how when I've sat down with people who are pro-Israel, Israeli, or Jewish and Jewish American, what's been interesting to me is seeing how different or how differently people are hearing the same thing. Do you know what I mean? So here's a simple one, not the simple issue, but like just an example. There's a chant that people often say, from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free.
Yep.
For anyone I know who's Palestinian, when I've asked them, what does that chant mean? They say, well, we want freedom for all our people, not just in Gaza, but from the West Bank. We want freedom for everyone.
From the River Jordan
From the River Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea. We want our freedom, you know?
Yep.
And that's what we chant. And then when I've spoken to my friends who are Jewish or Israeli maybe, and not even, you know, religious Jew or whatever, but Jewish, they go, no, this is a chant of genocide. They're saying from the river to the sea, they're going to cleanse us. What stands in the...
I agree completely with Trevor. I talked about that when the whole Rashida Tlaib thing came up, or whatever her name, Tlaib or whatever you pronounce her last name. When they came up with her and even Ilhan Omar, but I think Rashida Tlaib was really going hard. And they tried to say, oh, she was looking for, you know, using a phrase like that. I think right now it's still banned. It's definitely demonetized on X. No, that's not what it means. You don't get to tell me what I mean by a phrase. I understand you can say that you're offended by it. You can say, here's the historical context that makes me offended by it. But you can't tell me what I mean by the phrase. And if you know me, if I mean to say, and I'm all peace, I wouldn't even go down this route. But if I'm going to say something, I will let you know that's what I mean.
The way of the river and the sea. It's Israel. And I can't help but have compassion for anyone I speak to in this, because it in some ways, like in South Africa, we've had stories like this where there was a struggle song and a chant that was sung by Black people who were fighting against an apartheid government. And then now that song, some people feel like targets them if they're a white person who's a farmer in the country. And then the person singing it goes like, no, it's not about that. And I couldn't help but think about like how many times Nelson Mandela would give a speech. And at times I would think it was unnecessary, but he would go like, I am not for the oppression of Black people. And he's like, and I'm against the oppression of white people. And I'll be like, well, that's an unnecessary, why would you need to say? I used to think that all the time when I hear it.
Yeah.
And then now I find myself wondering, how much burden should we bear? Like, how much should we be cognizant of how we are saying what we are saying? Because the fights are still going to happen. But we almost want the most clarity to be fighting about the thing we actually, or arguing or discussing the thing.
Elon Musk talked about this on with Joe Rogan. He's been on like 3, 4, 5 times. I think this was the second time he was on. I think this was the one when he was smoking. But he said with Neuralink, you'll be able to understand potentially, like through telepathy, without even speaking, the core meaning of what somebody says. So many times I go back and listen to my videos and I'm like, that was a hot mess. I have no idea what I was trying to say, or I know what I was trying to say, but it didn't come out right. With Neuralink, there will be much less latency and the understanding will be pure. So for example, they're using the phrase, I don't personally use that phrase because I'm not passionate about that area in that way. But if somebody wants to talk about the river, in theory, with Neuralink, you would be able to, I don't know if you could fight it or hide somebody from knowing your true thoughts or not, but it is possible that you could get the true thoughts behind, like if somebody said from the river, you would hear, I don't know if you can manipulate it or not, you know what I mean, if you're trying to understand what somebody's saying and they're lying, but you could understand the meaning without them having to say it.
We actually need to be discussing. Does this make sense? Because you would think it's not necessary for Nelson Mandela to say that he does not want white people to be oppressed, but then you realize that if Black Lives Matter is a good example, and all these things. If you do not say that at times, and even if you do, because
I hate qualifying it, but sometimes you do.
But labeled a terrorist, let's not forget that. There are some people who go, wait, you don't want Black oppression, so what about white oppression? And it's amazing to me that he thought about, there was no social media. Nelson Mandela wasn't on Facebook. This was long before this time. But he intuitively knew that he has to say, I don't want Black people to be oppressed. However, this does not mean that I want white people to be oppressed either. I'm against all oppression. And so I'd love to know.
Well,
I love that because you can interpret that as, him sort of pacifying or conceding to the sort of white fragility, let's say. But you could also understand it going back to how we started the conversation about, sort of what we're being integrated into.
I still like her. There's a little bit of, the white fragility, really? You're too smart for using these type of terms.
Is that oftentimes we've seen when an oppressed group gets power, they reproduce the same forms of domination that they were once resisting. And so part of it is the fact that his historical imagination is so keen that he knows that it's not out of bounds to think that, if this is all you've known, this is how you've seen power exercised, that's all you've known, then once you seize it, you are very likely going to mimic or reproduce exactly what you were against.
That's a great statement there. I respect her for saying that.
And so part of it is really to think about, not just who is doing the action or saying the words, but really what are the logics behind it. And so language, it is a kind of technology in that way that can be wielded in various ways. My own sort of approach is really to try to stay keenly attuned to those who are, oppressed in any situation and thinking about, language from that perspective. I just came from a conference where after I gave my talk, there was a backlash because people, I guess, don't like using the word genocide to describe what's happening to Palestinians. And so I said, but I also had a slide there about caste and caste hierarchies. I was born in India, and there's an image that I show of Dalit protesters saying caste is evil. And I said, upper caste people who see that, I'm sure that makes them very uncomfortable. They're opposed to it. I talk about how religion is used to naturalize caste and make it seem like it's ancient and inevitable and cultural, right? And so I said, the difference is those people, the upper caste who might be opposed to me, showing that and talking about that, they don't currently have the power to impose their worldview on me. And I think it's a kind of hubris and it's a kind of supremacist thinking that you can tell me or tell an oppressed group how they can talk about their own oppression. That is itself a symptom of supremacist thinking and hubris that I think people need to reflect on themselves.
No, and I agree with that. But I think even in trying to channel, let's say, an argument someone might have, they would go, yes, but you are not in that situation. So I'm not telling them how to say it. I'm saying to you as the person who's not in the situation that your language is dangerous. Does this make sense?
Yeah, no, I completely understand.
And that's this. I mean this when I say I wrestle.
I think it's a tool for censorship, though.
So it's interesting you say this because
that's how I feel.
I think about it in many
because I can't tell them how to articulate their experience.
Exactly.
Do you understand? Like if we convert that,
it's exactly.
If we say, well, I believe it's a genocide. This is a chant that I choose to use as an ally. If I then in turn say, well, your language is problematic and it's insulting to me, I'm not allowed to do that. And like my view is, it's like if we really do have free speech.
Yeah, I was about to say they're talking about free speech, man. This is really a great discussion. And I obviously, if you've heard me, I do use the word genocide because that's what it was. That's the attempt, obviously, is to clean out the area of all the Palestinians. That's literally, I don't know what else you call that, but that is an opinion. I mean, you have to define what does that mean. And so I don't really get into the argument of, well, is it a genocide or not or whatever, but I will use the term though.
Have freedom of thought and expression and views. Everything is fair game. My favorite saying, racists have outlets too. It's the fact that like people should be free to say what they like. And I resent that policing instinctively on either side.
It tells you a lot about power. Who can impose their language on others? Who can get people fired for using certain language or saying certain things?
Whether it's the word genocide or a
but actually, I agree with you.
Oh, you're getting a little close to the sun.
On that.
Yeah.
I think that's a different thing that I'm speaking to.
Okay, what are you speaking to?
No, because I think so many of these things overlap, Like it's the Venn diagram again of issues.
Yeah.
So for instance, to play devil's advocate or whatever, there are many conservative people in America who have said, it's interesting how if that person, a person who is black, gay, trans, whatever, if they say something about me or my group or whatever, they can say it. But if I say something, even questioning, I just wonder, like, should a trans child be converted at this age? I am then labeled as transphobe and I'm fired from my job. And it's exactly what you're saying, by the way. They go, but I was not trying to be inflammatory. I was trying to ask a question. And the person goes, no, by even asking that question, you are enabling the idea. And they go like, well, what are you doing?
Wait, is Trevor a right winger now? What happened? Where are we going? What is going on right now?
And then their job goes, hey, we have to let you go because you're transphobic.
I've always kind of thought that's a straw man.
That's what makes you right wing in this country right now. I mean, he's a radical right winger at this point.
Argument just because if we look at the state of society today and who has actual power, these people aren't talking about freedom of speech. We know people are free to say what they say, but the people who bear the most consequences, I think, seem to be the most radical, especially if we think about it.
People who bear the most consequences?
The brunt of the consequences have the more radical view.
Which I think is normal in a society.
Right now, it's very hard to find a professor on probation for being pro-Israel. Let's be clear. In this moment in time.
Now, yes, and that's why I'm saying.
That's on probation for being pro-Palestine. And it's the chance of the people who align with Palestine who are being censored.
You see how they get close to the issue, but they never address the issue head on. Never. They don't have the courage to.
In a sense, making me uncomfortable.
Right. So you see, on that part, I'm saying that is clearer to me.
Yeah.
Right? Because whether we like it or not, throughout history, those who have power have used their power to protect themselves. And I mean, this seems like a natural human inclination. Like, it would be weird for a person with power to not use it. You'd be a very interesting type of person I'd love to meet. Please send us an email so we can talk to the podcast. No, I'm speaking to something different. Like, Ruha, I'd love to know, even from your experiences, were there moments where you were able to either facilitate or notice a breakthrough in the communication that the kids on campus were having with each other? That's what I'm talking more about.
Okay.
The ramifications of your speech are a separate issue.
Okay.
And who gets to decide is a separate issue. I'm just talking about with us as people. When we say something and how we say it, how much responsibility do we bear to clarify? And then also, because you've been in like literally the hotbed.
The way that I've tried to approach it is by defining the terms, but that doesn't seem, I don't seem to be having good luck with that. Because what's happening is we all have different definitions for these different terms.
Of it in America in many ways. Have you seen anything that was a glimpse of hope? Have you seen a conversation or an idea where you went, oh wow, as a sociologist, as a MacArthur genius, you were even surprised by the effect that it had?
I would say the most heartening and the most surprise is the wrong word, but the breakthrough that you might say I've observed is not about this kind of liberal speech exchange where we understand the other person's perspective, but it's been seeing specifically how Jewish students have stood with many others in terms of being against genocide, and so that it doesn't.
There has been quite a few, so I want to make sure that is acknowledged. Friend of the show, Jen Perlman's one of them. I mean, quite a few that I know personally. and just chat with online who have. I want to make sure that that's out there. So I appreciate that and agree with that. But basically that's covered because a lot of times I say the Zionist ones. She's talking about the non-Zionist ones, obviously.
Break down neatly along identity lines. That
The non-Zionist ones, they get treated just like, you know, the blacks that lose their black card.
they are able to understand, not despite their Jewishness, but because of their Jewishness, they're able to articulate how their values as Jews actually motivates their understanding that somehow this radical notion that all life is sacred, that their well-being, their security should not be at the expense of anyone else. Like that to me has been the most heartening way in which things are not reduced to identity, and they don't simply live at the realm of speech, but at the realm of action. Like people actually, Jewish students putting their own, you know, their own status and well-being on the line in order to stand in solidarity. So I would point to that as a place where, you know, we're breaking old patterns.
Right. I often wonder to myself, you know, I wrote this thought down. It applies to everything. The world of tech. Ruha, when I've read your work, you know, talking about who designs the tech that shapes our lives. There was a professor who's really well acclaimed, or like a researcher scientist, and he said, you know, and I paraphrase, like the problem with having women in the lab is that they're distracting and they're beautiful and you fall in love with them and they make, you know, they, and it was just like, well, these ladies, I can't think about the test tubes when I'm thinking of fallopian tubes. It was like that kind of vibe, you know?
Yes.
And I was listening to that, and obviously, you know, rightly so, there was like a straight
That wouldn't be Elon Musk, would it?
backlash. Like all women who are scientists were like, what? So we're not supposed to be in a lab because of this. But I found myself thinking about how every group is affected by another group in some way, shape, or form. And to your point of imagination, can we imagine other ways to do the thing, or is homogeny and sameness the only way to achieve it? Right? Because I think of, like, let's say schools at the lowest level, at the lowest, like even before sort of like people are formed, you see these little kids where they show that if girls are in a class with boys, they perform less.
Oh yeah, you know I'm very pro girls school.
Yeah, you are.
I'm a product of the girls
and
school.
so
I'm gonna end it there. Man, that was great. Man, I did not expect that. So I'm way off the rails here. But let's get to this. Is what I wanted to start with. So one of those times the thumbnail doesn't match the video, and at least this time it will. But way later in the video, how long have we been on? We're 2 hours in. 2 hours in, and we got to the lead thumbnail. I don't know how far we're gonna get through this one, but I'm gonna try to get through the whole thing. We'll see. Donald Trump, and who's that guy on the right?
I got to start with this. So,
Oh my gosh, this
he's working
audio
for free with DOGE. He's
it is so annoying how low the audio is off of X. I'm gonna go back to the previous video. I tried to
expelled from my primary school.
download.
Yeah.
And now if you
I'm
drop,
gonna try to download the audio and bump it up like I did yesterday. That's just too annoying for me.
I talk to you all the time about anti-fragility as opposed to just resilience.
Mhm.
I remember having a conversation with a group of like former military, you know, I don't know where they served and how. I think it was even from different countries. And they talked about how they were less efficient and less able to do their jobs if they were serving with women. And not in like, these people weren't being shitty, by the way. They just gave me a new perspective, you know? They weren't like, women shouldn't be in the military. They were like, can I be honest with you? When I'm in a gunfight and I'm surrounded by guys, I just think about winning the gunfight. When I'm in a gunfight and there's a woman in the battalion, I'm like, damn, we got to make sure she's also, because when we're picking up the backpacks and we're running, and then I'm thinking of her, the weight that she's carrying. And some of it, I know some of it will tap into like patriarchy. Some of it will tap into, but some of it also taps into the very real thing that human beings have, where a mother will care more for a child than she will for an adult. You know what I mean? And where like instinctively as people, sometimes we act differently.
Did you know that Trevor was this based? I always had the vibe that he was more based than what we saw with especially during the Black Lives Matter. He was wackadoo. But I didn't know he was this. I mean, I think I've been damn near 100% aligned with him this whole podcast. I did not expect that. I don't align with anybody on the right this much.
In an environment. So I just wonder, even for you talking about the sisterhood, what do you think is so important about finding spaces where people who are alike can come together without those spaces being exclusionary? Because it's a paradox.
Yeah. And so I think, you know, it's like when I talk about the sisterhood, it's always with an eye to what often gets assumed about the sisterhood. For me, the value of bringing together everyone that seems the same on one level is that you immediately realize how different you are. So for me, the great value of my Spelman education is I realized how much difference and hierarchy there is among Black women, whether it's because of skin tone, region, where you're born, your class, your religion, your sexuality. And so the value is to actually undo the notion that we're all alike, and that you actually get to wrestle deeply with the fault lines that you often don't have to get to do in predominantly white settings because you have to band together. And so the value of it is not to relish in some idealized notion of shared identity, but to actually say, crap, like we have all of these issues that we never ever get to deal with because we always have to have this false sense of unity and sameness, right?
Yeah.
That's base. Good stuff. I'm going to go over to my other screen here and do the Elon Trump interview. Hopefully this will be potted up much better. Sometimes it's even actually too loud, so I'll monitor that. Let's get it started. It's doing a transcription right now, but I can still play without that.
I got to start with this. So he's working for free with DOGE. He's kind of put a lot of his life on hold. And you sued Twitter a number of years ago. You just made him pay you $10 million?
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Well,
That's right.
I sued from long before he had it.
Yeah.
And I mean, they really did a number on me, you know, and I sued and they had to pay, they paid $10 million settlement.
You're okay with that?
I mean, I left it up to the lawyers and you know the team running Twitter. So I said, you guys do what you think is the right. It makes sense.
I think it's funny.
I think it's a very low. I was looking to get much more money than that.
So you gave him a discount in the lawsuit.
He got a he got a big discount. I don't think he even knows about it.
He's become one of your, if you read and believe the media, he's become one of your best friends. He's working for free for you.
Well, I love the president. I just want to be clear about that.
I don't care about that.
I know. I love the president.
You love the president.
I think President Trump is a good man, and he's, you know.
It's nice the way he said that. You know, there's something nice about it.
It really is. You know.
I got to start with this. So he's working for free with DOGE.
Had to pay. They paid $10 million settlement.
You're okay with that?
I mean, I left it up to the lawyers and you know the team running Twitter. So I said, you guys do what you think is the right. It makes sense.
I think it's funny.
I think it's a very low. I was looking to get much more money than that.
So you gave him a discount in the lawsuit.
He got a big discount. I don't think he even knows about it.
He's become one of your, if you read and believe the media, he's become one of your best friends. He's working for free for you.
Well, I love the president. I just want to be clear about that.
I don't care about that.
Wait, that's not. He's working for free. He's not working for free. He's definitely not. I just played the clip from a while back where he had allegedly through Grimes. I don't know why Grimes would lie about this. She wasn't trying to diss Elon when she was with him. She said there was a hole in her mattress. And she asked Elon, like, oh, yeah, the mattress has a, how does a mattress get a hole in it? I don't know, whatever. The mattress has a hole in it. And Grimes is like, hey, you know, babe, baby, can you get me a new mattress? And Elon was like, nah, don't you have one at your crib? He's cheap. He's not working for free for DOGE, man. You got to be stupid. He's getting paid and he's getting to fire the same regulators that went after him at SpaceX. I actually have no problem with that, to be honest with you. It's a conflict of interest, but the president can choose whoever they want. And people voted for Trump. If you don't like it, you can impeach him. So it is is it fascism? I've been calling it fascistic, because fascism would be the whole government working with business, which I guess it basically is. So, but we still have kind of a system underneath that to kind of mute it a little bit, to neuter it a little bit. But he's not working for free. He just got a contract. They had to change the website. Donald Trump gave Tesla a contract for military, I think it was. I'm not going to look it up. It's not that important. But it was said something. I think it said Tesla in it, and everybody was like, oh, it's the Cybertrucks. I don't know how much, millions or whatever, billions. And they changed it to electric vehicles after people started like, oh, okay, you slid him some cash then. Elon's giving him 10. Elon already gave him $370 something million, or I've heard everywhere from 277 to almost $400 million to get in that seat right now. What's another 10 million for this type of dude? While he's getting favorable deals from regulations, getting to fire his political enemies, which he can do. He's not doing it for free. And then the other part of this, I've not watched this yet. This comes across as fake to me. This is awkward. I know it's going to be awkward because it's E, but this sounds fake. I love Donald Trump. That sounds like you're just trying too hard.
I was looking to get much more money than that.
So you gave him a discount in the lawsuit.
He got a big discount. I don't think he even knows about it.
He's become one of your, if you read and believe the media, he's become one of your best friends. He's working for free for you.
Well, I love the president. I just want to be clear about that.
He is really awkward. I just love the president. Just came out of nowhere. Wait, how? You were a DeSantis guy just a little bit ago. You had open beef with Steve Bannon. I bring up the Steve Bannon stuff all the time. You had open beef with Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is like the face of the MAGA movement, the war room. So how do you have beef with Steve Bannon, but then you say you love Donald Trump? And that's, you can have that, but I haven't heard it being articulated. And you banned Steve Bannon from the platform.
I don't care about that.
I know. I love
You love the president.
I think President Trump is a.
Because there's a couple things happening here. People are trying to break them apart because together they are a freaking super team. Together, they are a monster of a team. Donald Trump handles the aura. Elon has no aura. You know, the kids will say, I don't know if the kids are still using the word charisma, Riz. He's got none of that. So Trump has all of that. Trump has the foreign engagement, all that. Trump can even do a lot of the domestic stuff as far as being the face of it. He obviously, and Trump shouldn't be, he's the face. He can't execute, and he's not really in the presidency. He found out the first term he can't lead the execution. He needs somebody else to lead the execution. He didn't have Elon in the first term. Elon is the executor. Ain't nobody execute better than Elon Musk, ever. From engineering, business, ever. He's worth almost $500 billion. If you question my thoughts on it, go look at his net worth. You put those two together, and they are running the most efficient. This isn't about whether you agree with the executive orders and the different things that are not, the communications and all that. They are running by far. Obama is probably the second best at being efficient. Everybody was in line with Obama. Obama had everybody in line, no leaks and all that. I'm not seeing any leaks from them. They're even better than Obama was at execution because he's using AI. They had the executive orders. I guarantee you they used AI on the executive orders to kind of write them up, and they're doing them quickly with AI. This is the most efficient, best run, executed executive branch that has, in my lifetime. I don't know about the other ones. And I remember, I was young, but I remember Reagan going forward. I remember Bush, Clinton, Bush Jr. or whatever, W, and then everybody, after, Obama and Trump. This is by far the most efficient. They are message, something messed up, message, clean up, go. There's no second where you're like, wait, that was a mistake. Why didn't you? Nope. Move it. If it reaches to a certain level, they put the fire out and they move on. It's amazingly run. So their enemies, and I'm not necessarily aligned with them. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. I'm not their enemies either, though, necessarily. Their enemies want to break this apart because they're coming at such a fire hose pace. Caitlin Collins or whatever her name was, she was on one of the late night shows, and she was like, they're working on the weekends, and I don't know what's going on. This is crazy. And she said it out of admiration. So they want to break them up. So they're doing this fake. I love president. That's why Elon jumped in like that, because we're here. The whole point of us being here is to say we love each other. And he has the Ashley St. Clair stuff coming out too. Don't think that's not playing a factor into this. With you got babies. How many more baby mamas you got running around with? What's the judgment there? What's the ethics with how you ran your platform on X and all that kind of stuff? It's not coming up on this friendly interview, but that is the backdrop. And he's like, oh, I love Trump. That's why it sounds phony to me.
I got to start with this. So he's working for free with DOGE. He's kind of put a lot of his life on hold. And you sued Twitter a number of years ago. You just made him pay you $10 million?
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Well,
That's right.
I sued from long before he had it.
Yeah.
And I mean, they really did a number on me, and I sued, and they had to pay. They paid $10 million settlement.
You're okay with that?
I mean, I left it up to the lawyers and the team running Twitter. So I said, you guys do what you think is the right. It makes sense.
I think it's funny.
I think
That's an odd place to start the interview. I would not have started the interview there. What would I have? I would have probably started it with. I would have started the interview with, you are a DeSantis guy. Tell me about that process to where you are now.
It's a very low. I was looking to get much more money than that.
So you gave him a discount when the lawsuit.
He got a big discount. I don't think he even knows about it.
He's become one of your, if you read and believe the media, he's become one of your best friends. He's working for free for you.
Well, I love the president. I just want to be clear about that.
I don't care about that.
I know. I love the president.
You love the president.
I think President Trump is a good man, and he's,
That's nice the way he said that. There's something nice about it.
See Trump with the Riz. It's awkward, and Trump's like, bro, this is getting kind of awkward. Then Trump is so good, he just smooths it along.
It is. Because, I mean, the president's been so unfairly attacked in the media. It's really outrageous. And I've at this point spent a lot of time with the president, and not once have I seen him do something that was mean or cruel or wrong. Not once.
I've known him.
This is not believable to me, man. Not that he would have seen it. It just sounds weird. That's not how people talk.
For 30 years.
Yeah.
And I've never seen anybody take as much as he's taken.
Yeah.
And we've discussed this, and I'm like, how do you deal with it?
Did I have a choice?
Well, you would say that to me. I'm like, what am I going to do? Worry about it? And then culminating in 2 assassination attempts, which resulted in your endorsement.
Well, I was going to do it anyway, but that was
it.
Precipitating event, yeah.
That speeded it up a little bit?
Yeah.
The day of the assassination.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It sped it up, but I was going to do it anyway.
He was going to do it anyway? I got to think about that, if I believe that or not.
Mr. President, with your indulgence, I'm convinced that people only know a little bit about Elon. I don't think they know everything about Elon, because as I studied and prepared for this interview, I learned a lot about you that I didn't know. I think people will think about Tesla. Democrats are demonizing you and trying to make the country hate you. I just want people to understand you a little bit better, and the person that you've gotten to know and have now put a lot of trust in.
Sure.
And, just let's go over a little bit of your bio, starting with PayPal and how you became involved in Tesla and SpaceX and Neuralink and all the...
I mean, I think the way to think of me is like I'm a technologist, and I try to make technologies that improve the world and make life better.
Your shirt.
Yeah, and that's why I like my T-shirt says tech support, because I'm here to provide the president with technology support.
You see how much more authentic that sounds? That's exactly what he's doing. It sounds completely different than I love Trump and all that awkwardness. This is him being himself.
And now that may seem like, well, is that a silly thing? But actually, it's a very important thing, because the president will make these executive orders, which are very sensible and good for the country, but then they don't get implemented. So if you take, for example, all the funding for the migrant hotels, the president issued an executive order. Hey, we need to stop taking taxpayer money and paying for luxury hotels for illegal immigrants, which makes no sense. Like, obviously, people do not want their tax dollars going to fund high-end hotels for illegals, and yet they were still doing that, even as late as last week.
He used the word illegals, and he's absolutely right. I'm the enforcer right now.
And so, we went in there and we're like, this is in violation of the presidential executive order. It needs to stop. So what we're doing here is one of the biggest functions of the DOGE team is just making sure that the presidential executive orders are actually carried out.
Yep.
And this is...
I didn't even know that. I've been saying that. I just said it. He's the executor.
I just want to point out, this is a very important thing, because the president is the elected representative of the people.
Absolutely.
So he's representing the will of the people.
Yep.
And if the bureaucracy is fighting the will of the people and preventing the president from implementing what the people want, then what we live in is a bureaucracy and not a democracy.
You're both aware, you have to be keenly aware, that the media and the punditry class, not that, I think you've proven they have no power anymore, because they threw everything they had at you and they didn't win. And that was, the New York Times, Washington Post, 3 networks, every late night comedy show, 2 cable channels. They threw everything, lawfare, weaponization.
Sure.
And now I see they want you two to start, they want a divorce. They want you two to start hating each other. And they try, President Elon Musk, for example. You do know that they're doing that to you.
Oh, I see it all the time. They tried it, then they stopped. That wasn't. They have many different things of hatred. Actually, Elon called me. He said, they're trying to drive us apart. I said, absolutely. They said, we have breaking news. Donald Trump has ceded control of the presidency to Elon Musk. President Musk will be attending a cabinet meeting tonight at 8 o'clock. And I say, It's just so obvious. They're so bad at it. I used to think they were good at it. They're actually bad at it, because
Trump is so good, man. He is just so good.
If they were good at it, I'd never be president. Because I think nobody in history has ever gotten more bad publicity than me. I could do the greatest things. I get 98% bad publicity. I could do, outside of you and a few of your very good friends, it's like the craziest thing. But you know what I have learned, Elon? The people are smart. They get it.
Yeah, they do.
They
Actually.
get it. They
Yeah.
really see what's happening.
Yes.
And at the end of this interview, what I would like is I want people to know the relationship and know more about you. What is the relationship, Mr. President?
Well, I respect him. I've always respected him. I never knew that he was right on certain things, and I'm usually pretty good at this stuff. He did Starlink. He did things that were so advanced and nobody knew what the hell they were. I can tell you in North Carolina, they had no communication. They were wiped out. Those people were, they had rivers in between. Land that never saw water, all of a sudden it was a river and a vicious, like rapids. People were dying all over. They had no communication. They said, do you know Elon Musk? They didn't really know I knew him. I said, yeah. He said, could you get Starlink? It's like the first time I ever heard of it. I said, what's Starlink? A communication system. That's unbelievable.
I have it.
Yeah. And he said, I called him and I said, listen, they really need it. And he got like thousands of units of this communication.
He brought him in. Remember the video? He brought him in on Cybertrucks. This is all true. All great stuff so far from Donald Trump.
And it saved a lot of lives. He got it immediately, and you can't get it. I mean, you have to wait a long time to get it. But he got it to him immediately, and I said, that's pretty amazing, and I didn't even know he had it. We watched the rocket ships, and we watched Tesla. I think, something that had an effect on me was when I saw the rocket ship come back and get grabbed, like you grab a beautiful little baby. You grab your baby. It just...
Hug the rocket.
I've never seen...
Right, everything needs hugging clean rockets.
No, but... And he said, you can't...
That's why people love Trump, man. The way he communicates is so good. You grab it like a little baby. That's exactly how it was, too.
We have a rocket program. If you're going to dump $1 billion into the ocean every time you fly, you have to save it.
Right.
And he saved it. First time that I've ever seen that done. Now, nobody else can do it. If you look at the U.S., Russia, or China, they can't do it. And they won't be able to do it for a long time. He has the technology. So you learn... I wanted somebody really smart to work with me in terms of the country, a very important aspect. Because, he doesn't talk about it. He's actually a very good businessman. And when he talks about...
I'm going to talk about the J.D. Vance, because that just came up to me. Because now I'm hearing people say, and I'm against J.D. Vance because of the kind of the stuff he said against Nick and all that. But I will be honest, J.D. Vance has been really doing he's been the most competent VP since Dick Cheney. And people, though, are saying, well, now Elon is the real president. Oh, well, he's more powerful than J.D. Vance. Nope, we're seeing something different here. J.D. Vance is in the same position as Trump. He's a dignitary. Like, he goes to Germany, says the stuff he did there. Let him focus on that stuff. Elon is the execution man. So you have the head honcho, aura, I'm the boss, Trump. At least I'm the face of it, whether I'm the real boss or not. J.D. Vance is the Robin to Trump's Batman. And then if I need to get the plumbing fixed or whatever, Elon's not fixing the plumbing, but he's going to get the contractors. He knows the AI. You need a guy who knows AI to be in charge of the AI guys. You're going to see everyone copy this setup. It's just the model of this, the new model of efficiency in the executive branch, and it has restored power to the executive branch.
The executive orders. And this is probably true for all presidents.
Yeah.
You write an executive order and you think it's done. You send it out. It doesn't get done. It doesn't get implemented. They don't implement it. Maybe they're from the last administration, and they are in some cases. You try and get them out as fast as you can. But as soon as he said that, I said, that's interesting. You write a beautiful executive and you sign it and you assume it's going to be done, but it's not. What he does is he takes it, and with his 100 geniuses, he's got some very brilliant young people working for him that dress much worse than him, actually.
Yeah,
they dress in just T-shirts. You wouldn't know they have 180 IQ.
Wait a minute. So he's your tech support.
No, he is. But he's much more than that.
I actually am tech support, though. But
he gets it done. He's a leader.
Yeah.
He really is. He gets it done. You get a lot of tech people, and you have people that are good with tech, but he gets it done.
Elon, just shut the hell up. just shut the hell up. Let Trump is cooking. Shut up.
I said in real estate, you had guys that would draw beautiful renderings of a building, and they'd draw the rendering, it would be great, and you say, great, when are you starting? But they were never able to get it built. They couldn't get the financing, they couldn't get the approvals, it would never get done. And then you have other guys that are able to get it done. They could just get it done. I was in real estate. Same thing in this. He gets it done. So when he said that, he said, when you sign these executive orders, a lot of them don't get done, and maybe the most important ones. And he would take that executive order that I'd sign, and he would have those people go to whatever agency it was. When
it sounds to me like Elon's getting a little annoyed that he's not talking more. Maybe it's just me. Just sit and be quiet.
When are you doing it? Get it done, get it done. And some guy that maybe didn't want to do it, all of a sudden he's signing. He just doesn't want to be bothered.
Do a lot of those executive orders have to be codified into law? Do you need the Republican Congress
and
to
they will
follow
be.
up?
A lot of them will be. Yeah.
They will.
Look, in the meantime, we have 4 years. The beauty is we have 4 years. That's why I like doing it right at the beginning, because an executive order is great. I mean, the one problem.
That's not. Yeah, obviously he technically has 4 years, but the end of the 4 years, you really don't have that. Midterms come up quickly, so that's why the first 100 days are so important. So that's not really true.
It's both good and bad, because when they did all these executive orders, I've canceled most of them. They were terrible. I mean, we're going to go radical left communist. Okay, it was crazy. Their
Really crazy.
executive orders were so bad. If they ever got them codified, you'd never be able to break them. So the damage that Biden has done to this country, and it's not even Biden, it's the people that circled him in the Oval Office, okay? But the damage they did to this country, in terms of, let's say, open borders, you know, there's so many things, but open borders where millions of people poured.
Little comments like when Trump said, it's not even Biden, it's the people circling him. That's a real authentic comment. You don't really hear in the way that he delivered it. A lot of politicians say it like that. That was a great comment right there. Because that's true. Was it really Biden? No, it really wasn't.
Into our country, and hundreds of thousands of those people are criminals. They're murderers, they're drug dealers, they're gang members, they're people from prisons from all over the world. And we have a great guy, Tom Homan, and he is doing so incredibly. You saw the numbers, they're down like 96%.
95%.
He is a phenomenal guy. And
notice the sleight of hand here. They're switching it from deportation numbers, which they were showing per day, and I don't know what's happened. Then we saw a little bit, and it doesn't. And then when they brought it back, it wasn't on pace to do anything substantial at all. The deportation, we'll see if they increase it, but they're shifting it from daily deportations to the solidifying the border. Which, I mean, that's good. Don't get me wrong, but it's definitely a sleight of hand. And Tom Homan now is the face of kind of that energy. I saw them also post like an ASMR video of deportations when the numbers really aren't good. They're doing great marketing, which is a part of being president politics, marketing and communication, to make it look like they're doing more on the immigration front than they really are. And they can't be called demons because they really aren't doing that much on the immigration front. And this is good, objectively good. So this is very smart communications.
Kristi Noem is doing an unbelievable job. And he wanted her. He said, she's so tough. And I said, I don't think of her as that way. You know, she's very nice. He said, no, she's so tough. And she is. I see with the horses. He's riding the horse. Let's go.
Is he saying Elon wanted her? Was she a DeSantis person? I'm going to play this and look that up.
Great. But the team we have is really unbelievable. But those executive orders, I sign them, and now they get passed on to him and his group and other people, and they're all getting done. We're getting them done.
Let me go back a little bit to your background, because it's beyond impressive. You were the chief engineer, for example. You were an...
Okay, she was always with Trump. So he was talking about Elon. I'm surprised by that. I didn't know that.
Early believer in Tesla. He became the CEO. And then the chief engineer, which was phenomenal. SpaceX, same thing, which is unbelievable. I mean, you were the first private company.
Elon's not happy that he's not getting to speak. I'm pretty confident in reading the body language. He does not look happy right now. And now I don't blame him, because now it's Hannity.
To send astronauts successfully into space. First private company to send astronauts into orbit.
Yeah.
That's pretty deep.
He's going to go into orbit soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, he's going to go to Mars. He's
Starlink
at some point. Yeah.
Is in over.
But they say they always ask me, like, do you want to die on Mars? And I say, well, yes, but not on impact.
Starlink is in 100 countries. This is going to be hard. I feel like I'm interviewing two brothers here.
You go ahead.
Star Shield, which could be used for national defense.
Yeah, it is already being used for national defense.
Then you have what is it called? Optimus, a part of Tesla.
The robot, yeah.
So he's a defense contractor. Elon's a defense contractor.
Robotic arm. Then you have an AI arm. And then you have something that really fascinated me. And it's called Neuralink.
Yes.
You might help the blind to see, and people with spinal cord injuries, that they can recover, where in the past, How close is that to becoming a success?
Neuralink, we've implanted Neuralink in 3 patients so far who are quadriplegics, and it allows them to directly control their phone and computer just using their mind, just by thinking. It's like, so we call this product telepathy. So you control your computer and phone just by thinking, and it's possible to actually control the computer and phone faster than someone who has working hands.
Wow.
Then the next step would be to add a second Neuralink implant past the point where the neuron's damaged, so that somebody can walk again, and so they can have full body functionality restored.
That's the first I heard that they would need 2.
And
And you like Bobby, right?
I like Bobby, actually. Yeah, I think I supported Bobby Kennedy. I think he's unfairly maligned as someone who is anti-science, but I think he isn't. He just wants to question the science, which is the essence of the science. The scientific method fundamentally is about always questioning the science.
No, they didn't tell us the truth about COVID.
Right.
That's for sure.
Yes.
And we
Elon is. That's how I would probably define Elon politically as a RFKJ type, a Democrat like that.
learned a lot with the Twitter files. And that just then raises a question. You're the richest man in the world. You may not like that part. You're pretty competitive.
neither here nor there.
I've known you a long
matters.
time. But,
That's why.
but he's on your team.
President.
Well, that's true. He can't top that.
He's good. You know, I wanted to find somebody smarter than him. I searched all over. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't.
You really tried hard.
I couldn't find anyone smarter, right? So we had it for the country.
But this is the thing.
We settled on this.
Well,
guy.
thanks for having me.
So,
I'm just trying to be useful.
this is the interesting. This is where we are as a society, and I hate to do this to you, but I'm going to do it anyway. You're doing all of these things. Your DOGE. Nobody at DOGE gets paid a penny, correct?
Well, actually, some people are federal employees.
Some are, okay.
Yeah,
They're helping.
But I think it's fair to say that the software engineers at DOGE could be earning millions of dollars a year instead of earning a small fraction of that as federal employees.
Okay, so just
And they're very committed people.
so
Yes.
you're committed to helping the blind see people with.
That's not a good angle to. Sean Hannity's trying to help them look better. You know, it's a puff interview. That doesn't resonate with me. I don't care about that. They're going to get taken care of. Elon's making his money. Don't go that angle.
Spinal cord injuries recover.
Yes.
You're committed to getting to Mars. You're committed to rescue. You're going to help rescue next month.
Elon's upset again. Sean Hannity's not stopping to talk. He's talking too much. Yep. Yeah, I see it right on his face.
2 astronauts that I think were abandoned. They dispute that in an interview.
When are you
At the
getting them?
president's request or instruction, we are accelerating the return of the astronauts, which was postponed kind of to a ridiculous degree.
They got left in space.
They've been there. They were supposed to be there 8 days. They're there almost 300.
Biden.
They were put, yes, they were left up there for political reasons, which is not good.
Okay, it's not good. Now, if I had the weight of the pressure of doing that successfully on my shoulders, I think I'd be, But when we spoke before we did this interview, you are very confident. You think this will be a successful mission.
Well, we don't want to be complacent, but we have brought astronauts back from the space station many times before, and always with success.
Mm-hmm.
So, as long as we're not complacent,
When are you going to launch?
I think it's about 4 weeks to bring them back.
About 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And
You
We're
have
being
the go-ahead.
extremely cautious. Yeah.
You now have the go-ahead.
Yes. Well, thanks to you.
They didn't have the go-ahead with Biden.
Yeah. So that's who is it? It's the FAA? I forgot who it is. One of the agencies. And Elon Musk is notorious for giving an aggressive timeline. So I would be surprised if it's 4 weeks. I would be surprised if it wasn't like 3 months. But we'll see. I'm not against him or anything like that, but following him closely, his timelines are aggressive on purpose so that, you missed the deadline, but okay, you still did it faster than if we said a year or something like that.
what's
He
that?
was going to leave him in space. I think he was going to leave him in space.
Well, it's like
He
when we
considered
were
it
growing
like-
up, lost in space.
Yeah, he didn't want the publicity. Can you believe it?
Unbelievable. And so
Yeah.
I want to echo something that the president said and then ask an overarching question. So people get hit with Hurricane Helene. They have no communication with the outside world. You come to the rescue. You donated that, I
Yes,
believe?
yes.
Okay. You donated to the people
He saved a lot of lives.
In
North Carolina. He saved a lot of lives.
and California after the wildfires?
California, but I mean in North Carolina where they were really in trouble, they had no communication. People were
Nothing.
dying. They were dying of starvation. He saved a lot of lives in North Carolina.
Okay, now you're going to rescue astronauts. And now, and again, you do all of this. I would think liberals would love the fact that you have the biggest electric vehicle company in the world.
Yeah. I mean, I used to be adored by the left.
Not anymore.
Less so these
He
days.
killed that, huh?
That's true.
I mean, less.
I really didn't know.
Well, I mean, this whole sort of like, they call it like Trump derangement syndrome. And you don't realize how real this is until you can't reason with people. So I was at a friend's birthday party in LA, just a birthday dinner, and it was like a nice, quiet dinner, and everyone was behaving normally. And I happened to mention, this is before the election, like a month or two before, I happened to mention the president's name, and it was like they got shot with a dart in the jugular that contained like methamphetamine and rabies. Okay, and they're like, wow, and I'm like, what is wrong, guys? Like, you can't have like normal conversation. Yeah. And it's like they become completely irrational.
He has no idea that if you're friends with him, you pay a price. It's like I walk in a restaurant in New York and it's like half the room gets daggers and they want to.
No, the eye daggers level is insane. Yeah. I mean, there was I had some invitation because I got invited to basically a big sort of dem event that was, but I received the invitation like the beginning of last year, and I still attended even after I'd endorsed President Trump, and I didn't realize how profoundly that would affect how I was received. I mean, I walk into the room and I'm getting just the dirty looks from everyone. Like, if looks could kill, I would have been dead several times over.
But that was not before Trump.
Ashes on the floor.
Before Trump, that never happened, right?
No.
This is the $1 million or $1 billion among billionaires question. So you have all of this going on, and you stop. In a way, you're still doing it, and you partner with him. And this is what you get from the Democrats. You get, nobody voted for Elon. Well, nobody voted for any of your cabinet nominees. Okay, people are dying because of DOGE cuts. I'll give you a chance to respond to all that. What DOGE is doing is illegal. Elon Musk is more street vernacular for a male body part. It's a constitutional crisis.
Okay. Why are they reacting like this?
Well, first of all, do you give it fly and rip? Or number one, and
well, I guess we must be over the target or doing something right. If they wouldn't be complaining so much if we weren't doing something useful. I think. But what all we're really trying to do here is restore the will of the people through the president. And what we're finding is that there's an unelected bureaucracy. Speaking of unelected, there's a vast federal bureaucracy that is implacably opposed to the president and the cabinet. And you look at, say, DC voting, it's 92% Kamala. Okay, so we're 92% Kamala. That's a lot.
They don't like me here either.
I think about that number a lot. I'm like 92%. That's basically almost everyone.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, but how can you, if the will of the president is not implemented, and the president is representative of the people, that means the will of the people is not being implemented, and that means we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy. And so I think what we're seeing here is the thrashing of the bureaucracy as we try to restore democracy and the will of the people. Is this making sense? I mean,
yes.
No, of course it does. I mean, to me, if you look at our framers and our founders, and you really become a student of history, Mr. President, and we've had conversations both on air and off air. And if we talk about constitutional order or transformational change, nobody can argue that what's happening here is going at the speed of light. But however, what were the principles of our framers and our founders? They wanted limited government, greater freedom for the people. And we'll get to the specific cutting of waste, fraud, and abuse. That is your goal, is it not?
Yeah, and my goal was to get great people. And when you look at what this man has done, I mean, it was something. I knew him a little bit through the White House. Originally, I'd see him around a little bit. I didn't know him before that. And I respected what he did. And he fought hard. You know, he was maybe questioned for a while. He was having some difficulties. It was not easy doing what he did. I mean, how many people have started a car company and made it really successful and made a better car where it's, beating these big companies that's all they do is cars? I mean, it's really amazing the things he's done. But I didn't know it as much then as now. I mean, the fruits have sort of taken hold. But I wanted great people. And he's a great person. He's an amazing person. He's also a caring person. He uses the word care. So they sign a contract in a government agency, and it has 3 months, and the guy leaves that signed the contract, and nobody else is there, and they pay the contract for 10 years.
Yeah.
So the guy is getting checks for years and years and years, and he's telling his family, obviously, maybe it was crooked, maybe he paid to get the contract, or maybe he paid that they didn't terminate it. But, we have contracts that go forever, and they've been going for years. And they're supposed to end in 3 months or 5 months or 2 years or something, and they go forever. So the guy is either crooked, where he knew this was going to happen, or he's crooked because he's getting payments that he knows he shouldn't be getting. But they're finding things like that. They're finding things far worse than that. And they're finding billions, and it will be hundreds of billions of dollars worth of fraud. I say waste and abuse, but fraud, waste, and abuse. And he's doing an amazing job. And he attracts a young, very smart type of person. I call them high IQ individuals, and they are. They're very high IQ. And when they go in to see the people and talk to these people, the people think they're going to pull it over. They don't. These guys are smart. and they love the country. You know, there's a certain something, but he uses the word care. So people have to care. Like when I bought Air Force One, I negotiated the price. It was $5.7 billion, and I got them down to $1.7 billion. Now they're not building the plane fast enough. I mean, they're actually in default. Boeing, they're supposed to have been building this thing forever. I don't know what's going on. We don't build the way we used to build. You know, we used to build like a ship a day, and now to build a ship is like a big deal. And we're going to get this country back on track. We can do it, but so many things. It takes so long to get things built and get things done.
We are a little bit past the halfway mark, and the takeaway is, other than that it's meaningless now. The start was a little awkward. Everything else has been exactly what the purpose of the interview is from the Elon and Trump side is. It's been a perfect interview.
And a lot of it could be something we've been discussing. The regulators go in and they make it impossible to build. They make it very difficult to build anything, whether it's a ship, a plane, or a building, or anything. And some of them do it because they want to show how important they are. Some of them do it maybe because they think they're right. They use the environment to stop progress and to stop things. It's always the environment. It's an environmental problem. It's not an environmental problem at all. But they do a lot of things. And by the way, speaking of that, Lee Zeldin is going to be fantastic in the position. So important. He could take 10 years to approve or disapprove something, or he could do it in a month. You know, just as good. Sure. And I think you're going to see a fantastic job done by him. He's a tremendous guy.
I believe he's EPA.
Newt, you echoed something when I just met you, and it was very similar to what Newt has been saying, that he brought this country to the dance. This is the opportunity to be transformational and to have, I would argue, the most consequential presidency if we really dig down and do something that had never been done before, and that is get rid of this bureaucracy. And I'm going to get to the specifics. You say the same thing. It's not done yet. And what do you mean by that?
I mean, winning the election is really the opportunity to fix the system. It is not fixing the system itself. So it's the opportunity to fix the system and to restore the power of democracy. And
that's learning from the first Trump. So Trump ran, and I don't blame him at all. He got into D.C. It was crazy, did the best he could. But winning the presidency, like Elon said, is just the opportunity. Now we got to execute, and that's why they were ready for this one.
You know, people, like, it's funny how often when these attacks occur, the thing that they're accusing the administration of is what they are guilty of. They're saying that things are being done unconstitutional, but what they are doing is unconstitutional. Yep. They are guilty of the crime of which they accuse us.
That's always the first thing they do. It's in violation of the Constitution. They don't even know what they're talking. Yep. Well, they don't. It's just a con job. It's a big con job, and they're so bad for the country. It's so dangerous and so bad, and the media is so bad.
Trump is so good. So Elon said everything right, and then Trump comes in and says it's a con job, and it just resonates with the con. I think for me, even it just resonates much better and lands.
Watch MSNBC, which I don't watch much, but you have to watch The Enemy on occasion. The level of arrogance and cheating, and they're just horrible people. These are horrible people.
They tell conspiracy theories.
And they start up with the Constitution. They couldn't care less about the Constitution. CNN, likewise.
Trump is so good at, there it is again. Everybody knows he's right. Everyone, even the ones that agree with MSNBC, know he's right there.
I mean, I watch them asking questions with, you know, the hatred with the, I said, why are you asking the question with such anger? You're asking me a normal question, but you see the bias. The bias is so incredible. Those two are bad. PBS is bad. AP is bad. CBS is terrible. I mean, CBS now, they changed an answer in Kamala. They asked her some questions. She answered them like, you know, a low IQ person, the opposite of him, the absolute opposite. But she gave a horrible answer. They took the entire answer out and they put another answer that she gave 20 minutes later into the as the answer. I've never even heard of that. I thought I heard of it all.
I'm going to, just for the sake of saving time, because I could spend, and I've done this on radio and TV, I can spend an hour finding the outrageous amounts of money being spent abroad, like USAID, and I just want to mention a couple, but I'm going to scroll it.
Well, I guess at a high level, I think it's what the president mentioned earlier, which is that in order to save taxpayer money, it comes down to two things: competence and caring. And when the president was shown the outrageous bill for the new Air Force One, and then negotiated it down, if the president had not applied competence and caring, the price would have been 50% higher, literally 50% higher. The president cared, the president was competent, the price was not 50% higher as a result. And so when you add more competence and caring, you get a better deal for the American people.
But we could,
well said.
We were talking about this yesterday. I could give me thousands of bills. I could pick any one of them, but I could take all 1,000. And let's say it's a bill for $5,000, just $5,000, and it's done by some bureaucrat. And if he would say, I'll give you $3, I don't want to pay you $5, it's too high, I'll give you $3. But they don't do that. If a guy sends in a bill for $5,000, they pay $5,000. They expect to be cut. Everybody expects to be cut. When you send in a bill, you expect to be cut. They send in the bill higher for the most part. This is true with lawyers, legal fees. When they send in legal fees, I can cut. I wish I had the time. I would save so, but I could cut these bills in half, much better than half. But you offer people a much lower number because you know they actually put fat. I'm not even saying it's like a way of business. They put more on because they expect to be negotiated. When you send in a bill to the government, there's nobody to negotiate.
Yes.
You send in a bill for $10,000 and they send you a check back for $10,000. If you would call them and said, we'll give you $5. No, I need more than $5. We'll give you $5. I'm not going to pay any more than $5. Make it $6. No, I'm not going to make it $6. And you'll settle for $55.
Democrats don't have an answer for this. If they're not going to steal the elections, they're done. They should just close up shop. They have no answer for that. Now, I know the thing that they're hanging on to is that Trump is just, one of the greatest of all time to do this. Look at this interview. This is just flawless. Flawless victory. This is just amazing interview skills. And they're hoping that when he's gone, then it's all over. And they could be right there, so I will change. We'll see how it looks without Trump. But for this right here that we're watching, they have no answer for, other than stealing it.
$100. You've just cut the bill almost in half, and it took like 2 minutes. But none of that stuff.
Don't we call that the art of the deal?
But that's caring. No, it's not even the art of the deal. It's caring. He uses the word. It's caring.
Yeah.
It's a certain competence, but I think it's more caring.
If you add either ingredient, either competence or caring, you'll get a better outcome. But it stands to reason that if you don't have competence, you don't have caring, you're going to get a terrible deal. And the problem is that the American taxpayers have been getting a terrible deal because look at the last administration. Can any reasonable person say that the last administration was either competent or caring?
But they lied to us and said that Joe didn't have a cognitive decline.
They fully lied.
They said the borders were closed. They said that the borders were secure. They said that they said Obamacare would save.
They're flat out.
And Trump and Elon have good chemistry here, playing off each other back and forth.
They flat out lied. As I scroll this information, and I'll scroll a lot more than I'll mention to both of you, and this is the cost savings. I want people at home to understand this part. Average American makes $66,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay? We have $37 trillion in national debt.
Yes.
Now, all the money I'm about to mention, and what we're going to scroll on our screen, and all of this is going to foreign countries. It is not being spent here in America for better schools, law and order.
I think the average taxpaying American should be mad as hell because their tax money is being poorly spent.
All right, let me go to the second question first. I want to know, because people like Joni Ernst and
Joni Ernst has tried for a long time, and she's actually got a lot of good data. Senator Ernst has been really helpful, actually.
Okay, but they actually hide what the real purpose of the spending is.
Sure.
In other words, this is a question. How did you decipher? It will say humanitarian blah, blah, blah in Serbia or Afghanistan. We even give money to China, for crying out loud, which I think is nuts.
We'll give money to the Taliban.
But money to the Taliban.
Like a lot.
All right. So
like for what?
But
I want to see the pictures of what they did.
But they try to $20 million for consultant-driven ESG investments in Africa, DEI programs in Serbia. The president's favorite. I'm sure you love that taxpayer money was spent on a DEI musical in Ireland, or a transgender opera in Colombia, or a transgender.
It sounds like how can these things be real? But this is actually what was done. It sounds like a comedy sketch. Or
I have 20 pages of this.
Right. It's not. It's a list a mile long.
If you had to put a number on it, how much do you think you've identified waste, fraud, abuse, corruption at this point? And again, we're going to be.
Before he answers, I did see. I'm still breaking down the information, but the DOGE website is updated. The savings tab that I looked at a live yesterday or 2 days ago, it had nothing in there. It was like coming soon this weekend. They did populate it. I'm still trying to break down those numbers.
Scrolling this throughout the program.
Well, the overall goal is to try to get $1 trillion out of the deficit. And if the deficit is not brought under control, America will go bankrupt. This is a very important thing for people to understand. A country is no different from an individual in that if an individual overspends, an individual can go bankrupt, and so can a country. And the massive waste, fraud, and abuse that has been going on, which is leading to a $2 trillion a year deficit. That's what the president was handed on Jan 20th, a $2 trillion deficit. It's insane.
For this fiscal year.
Yeah, we inherited.
Yeah.
And inflation is back. I'm only here for 2.5 weeks.
That was January.
Inflation is back. No, think of it. Inflation's back. And they said, oh, Trump, I had nothing to do with it. These people have run the country. They spent.
Normies aren't going to understand, but of course Trump had something to do with it. He had a lot to do with it with the COVID pandemic stuff.
Money like nobody's ever spent. They were given $9.
But it is much bigger than him, so that is fair. It's not just Trump. I mean, that happened from Obama
trillion
and beyond.
dollars to throw out the window. $9 trillion. And they spent it on the green news scam, I call it. It's the greatest scam in the history of the country. One of them. We have a lot of them, I guess, but one of them. Dollar-wise,
and
probably.
DEI and wokeism and transgenderism.
Well, that's all part of it, yeah.
And LGBTQ plus.
Yeah.
By the way, not in America. Other countries, not here.
You know, the amazing thing is when you see like the teaching of DEI, $9 million. How do you spend $9 million to teach? No matter what it is, you could teach physics.
Totally.
You could go to MIT for
It's
a lot less.
expensive.
Yeah,
Expensive.
the teaching of
Expensive,
DEI.
yes.
How much do you believe, Elon, you've identified in waste, fraud, abuse, corruption now? And how much do you anticipate you will?
Sure. Well, I think
1%. No, because it's so massive. This is
Yeah,
huge
exactly.
money.
So what we
Huge
found
money.
out is 1%.
Trump jumped in to save Elon. Good stuff.
We're just gotten
As
started.
good as they are, they're not going to find some contract that was crooked, crooked as hell. And I mean, there's going to be so much that isn't found. But what is found, I think he's going to find $1 trillion.
Yeah, I think so.
But I think it's a very small percentage compared to what it is.
Let me go to an area that I think is key, and you talked about this in recent interviews, and that is we don't need a Department of Education. Okay. And what some people are trying to do is stoke fears that, oh my gosh, my kid's not going to get the money for education, or grandma's Social Security and Medicare. This was a big promise of yours on the campaign trail. So I really want to give you both an opportunity to assure the American people you will keep, that money will be allocated for students, but with higher standards, for example, I would assume associated with monies given or
Just
vouchers.
so much, and then Elon goes, but look, Social Security won't be touched, other than this fraud or something. We're going to find it's going to be strengthened, but won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is going to be touched.
Nothing.
You don't have to. Now, if there are illegal migrants in the system, we're going to get them out of the system and all of that fraud, but it's not going to be touched. School. I want to bring school back to the states so that Iowa, Indiana, all these places, Idaho, New Hampshire, there's so many places in the states. I figure 35 really run well. And right now it's Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, China. China, can you imagine, has top schools. We're last. So they have a list of 40 countries. We're number 40. Usually we're 38, 39. The last time we were number 40. And what I say is you got to give it back. So it doesn't work. I'll tell you what we're number one in, cost per pupil. We spend more money than any other country by far. It's not even close per pupil. Okay. So we know it doesn't work. So we spend the most and we have the worst, right? The worst result. When we give that back to Indiana, when we give that back to Iowa and back to a lot of the states that run well, they run well. There's a lot of them, 35, 37, 38. Now, you're going to have 10 laggards, but you're going to have 5 real laggards. But that's going to be okay. Take New York. You give it to Westchester County. You give it to Suffolk County. You give it to upstate New York. And you give it to Manhattan. But you give it to 4 or 5 subsections. Same thing in California. Los Angeles is going to be a problem, but you're going to give it to places that run well. We can change education. Now, school choice is important, but that will get taken care of automatically. We want to bring education back to the states.
Wow.
You will spend half the number, and I'm not even doing this. I'm not even doing this to save, but you will save. It costs you much less money. You get a much better education. If you go to some of these states, you'll be the equivalent of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, places that really have a good school system. You'll have those places will be the equivalent, and your overall numbers will get so much better.
Do you want standards associated?
The only thing I want to do from Washington, D.C. is make sure they're teaching English, reading, writing,
math,
and
science.
arithmetic.
Science?
Okay, a little science.
Science might help.
You
Sure.
know,
Computers.
You're not going to have much of a problem with that, but that's it.
So your task now, and I pray to God this is successful.
I don't know how you could be a libertarian and disagree with anything he just said there. I mean, he made the case for getting rid of the department, Trump, better than most libertarians do. Wow.
I really do. I wish you Godspeed. Godspeed, John Glenn.
It's going to be, by the way. I really believe
But
it's
there
coming.
are
Because the country's
legitimate
going to do
areas.
well beside this. This is cutting. We're only talking about cutting. We're also going to make a lot of money. We're taking in so much.
What about his business? What if there is
Then we won't
a
let him
contract
do it.
he would otherwise
We're
get?
not going to let him do it.
You're not
If
gonna
he's
let him
got a conflict. I mean, look, he's in certain areas. I mean, I see this morning, I didn't know, but I said, dude.
Look at Trump controlling it again. He knew Sean Hannity was going down the area. They're about to wrap up the interview. He's like, nah, I got this. Don't worry.
The right thing, where they're cutting way back on the electric vehicle subsidies.
Yes.
They're cutting back.
You're losing.
Not only cutting back.
Hurt you.
Correct.
Yeah. Now,
You don't
I
care.
will tell you,
Well,
he's probably not that happy with it, but that would have been one thing he would have come to me and said, listen, you got to do me a favor. This is crazy. But this was,
So they're talking about taking away some of the government subsidies for electric cars. The government subsidies are actually, in my opinion, helping the competitors to Tesla more than Tesla. Without the government subsidies, Tesla survives and the other ones don't.
in the tax bill. They're cutting back on the subsidies. I wasn't involved in it. I said, do what's right, and they're coming up with a tax bill. It's just preliminary. But I mean, if he were involved, wouldn't you think he'd probably do that? Now, maybe he does better if you cut back on the subsidies. Who knows? Because he figures he does think differently. He thinks he has a better product.
Yeah.
And as long as he has a level playing field, he doesn't care what you do, which is he's told me that.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't asked the president for anything
Exactly.
ever.
Now, I know this is BS. Elon's getting money, but the way that they're handling it optic-wise is flawless.
And if it comes up, how will you handle it?
Well,
He won't be involved.
yeah, I'll recuse myself if it is.
If there's a conflict, he won't be involved.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want that, and he won't want it.
Right, and also I'm getting a sort of a daily proctology exam here. You know, it's not like I'm going to be getting away from something in the dead of night.
Welcome to D.C. If you want a friend, get a dog.
Well, I do have a dog, but I also have friends. My dog loves me. Poor little creature.
You know the truth with this
I hate
guy?
to bring it to D.C.
I know every businessman. I know the good ones, the bad ones, the smart ones, the lucky ones. I know them. This guy's he's a brilliant guy. He's a great guy. He's got tremendous imagination and scientific imagination, far beyond, you keep talking about a technologist and all, but you're much more than a technologist. You are that. But he's also a good person. He's a very good person, and he wants to see the country do well. And I know a lot of great business people, really great business people, but they're not really, in some cases, very good people. And I know people that would try and take advantage of the situation. This guy's somebody that really cares for the country. And I saw that very early on. I saw it really a long time ago when I got to know him. He's a very different kind of a character. That's why, who loves him? Young people that are very smart and
That's
that love
true.
the country.
Wow. I did not expect that. Man. That was, couldn't have gone any better. That was an excellent interview. All right, I'm going to call it a night. That was a good one. I had a couple streams. That was fun. I'll put some clips up. I appreciate everybody. I'm out.
The next clip is ready below. Welcome to After Show Carnage.